a vantage point in which a fire team can set up and interdict enemy forces attempting to enter or leave a target area. The target in this case was a small village, seemingly abandoned and heavily deteriorated, with crumbling masonry and multiple bombed-out huts. The entire place was incredibly unsettling, showing no signs of life other than a single black cat that slinked amongst the shadows of the buildings. The moon was high in the sky that night, bathing the ramshackle collection of seemingly ancient structures in an eerie light. After ensuring the 240 Lima was set up, Tom surveyed the village. He ultimately focused on a damaged stone wall less than 50 meters away. There was a hole punched out in the center of it, just large enough for a man to stick his head and shoulders through. He watched the hole intently for almost the entire mission, infrared laser up and M4A1 at the ready, expecting the barrel of an AK-47 to appear in it at any moment. It never did. The rifle team proceeds into the village and search it top to bottom, finding no traces of the high-value target they were after, or any signs of life at all for that matter. Kyle and Tom relocated to link up with several members of a rifle squad in a large ditch over 100 meters away from the target site. They continued to watch the perimeter as discussions were being held about how to proceed. That's when all hell broke loose. One of the platoon's senior sergeants came running over, yelling at Tom and the other rangers to get out of the ditch. The comms net exploded with orders to fall back to the LZ for immediate exfiltration. Tom and Kyle were beyond confused. Had EOD picked up something? Maybe they were all standing atop a buried IED belt, something far from unheard of. The Chinooks double-timed it back to their location and landed, allowing all of the rangers to board. After a final head count to ensure no one had been left behind, the helicopters lifted off and returned to the airfield. The mission had lasted less than an hour, seemingly ending as soon as it had begun, all without a single shot being fired and no contact with the Taliban. Or so Tom thought. After returning to base, the platoon was debriefed, and the reason for the sudden scrub of the mission became very clear. Shortly after Tom and Kyle had posted up in the ditch, signals collection specialists attached to the Rangers had picked up enemy radio chatter in the vicinity of the assault force. Very clearly and calmly the Taliban had spoken. There are 6 men in the ditch. 2 of them are manning a machine gun on the leftmost edge. They are facing the northwest. You can flank them if you follow the berm. They proceeded to list a magnitude of details about the assault force and their positions. They were stalking the Rangers, hunting the hunters. Based on the chatter, it was clear that an unknown number of insurgents were setting up a potential deadly ambush. Other than the intercepted broadcast, the Rangers had been completely unaware of their presence. None of the men on the ground had seen any indication of enemy activity. The trained canines hadn't picked up any sense. The drones and Overwatch aircraft circling the area didn't see a damn thing, even with FLIR, thermal vision. Yet the Taliban were listing numerous meticulous details about the Rangers as if they were standing right next to them in the darkness. It was a humbling experience for the entire platoon. For Tom, that mission always sent a shiver up his spine to think about, even though later ops during the same deployment involved full-scale firefights and ambushes. This took place during the summer of 1993. I was living in Montana but had a boyfriend in British Columbia, and I often traveled between the two places. We were broke and careless, so we hitchhiked when we needed to get somewhere further than biking distance. I had spent the month of August with him in BC, and eventually it was time to go back to school. I, of course, not having worked much at all that summer, had no money. My bum-ass boyfriend hadn't come through with any money for a bus ticket either. My parents were mad at me, so they weren't giving me any money. All my friends were broke, but we didn't have a phone to call them anyway. We were living in a 2-room cabin with no running water in the mountains. The only phone was a party line that belonged to the neighbors and was basically only for emergencies. The decision was made. I was already 2 days late for school and I didn't feel like panhandling for a bus ticket. I had to get back, and couldn't wait for my boyfriend's money to materialize. It would be my first time hitchhiking alone. I put my backpack's worth of stuff together, making sure I had my ID, because one time we hitched to the border, left Canada and tried to get into the US before I realized I had left my ID in Canada, meaning I had no ID to enter the US, but also no ID to get back into Canada. But that's a story for another day. And hit the road. Things went surprisingly smooth for the majority of the trip. An elderly couple picked me up as soon as I got off the mountain and into town and took me all the way to Creston, right near the border crossing. I walked across and was almost immediately picked up by a guy who at first gave me mild creeps, but all he did was lecture me about how dangerous it was to hitchhike alone and how much I reminded him of his daughter. He took me all the way to Coeur d'Alene, which was damn near half the trip. I was actually having phenomenal luck. I walked to just outside the city limits and stuck my thumb out. 1 hour went by, then 2. You're often walking really slow when you're trying to catch a ride, and eventually I came across a small flap of cardboard. I picked it up, thinking I could walk off at the next exit, borrow a marker at a gas station, and make a sign. I thought that might help me get a ride. So I'm walking alone a little faster now, and suddenly I see something moving in my peripheral vision. I tense, look and see it's a 2-foot, thin, dark snake trying to get over the cement guardrail to the shoulder. He was never going to make it. He was kind of trying to throw himself over it sideways. I happen to kinda like snakes, and he looked pretty harmless, so I used my sign as a shovel and pitched him over the wall. In hindsight, I should have realized the snake was a bad omen. Before I could reach the next exit, a car slowed to a stop. It's always creepy when a car stops and you're walking up to it, trying to judge if it's a Ted Bundy or just an eccentric like you. My heart always sank a little when it would be a single man, but I soon realized he wasn't alone. There was a kid in the front seat who was probably aged 10 to 13. The guy was a little too friendly, but what was he gonna do? Murder me in front of his kid? I was very young and dumb. I decided to get in. The man was pretty chatty, introducing the kid as his nephew. He said they were driving back to where they lived in St. Louis from visiting his brother in Seattle so the kid could visit his grandma. The kid hardly said a word. If I remember correctly, and it's been a very long time, it's about 3 hours to where I lived from Coeur d'Alene. He was taking Highway 90 right past the city I lived in, so I was relieved I wouldn't have to get out of the car and thumb it again. The first hour goes by, and it's friendly chit-chat, lots of family anecdotes, and general small talk. The switchblade my boyfriend gave me was cradled in the bottom of my palm the whole time, up my sleeve and out of view, but I began to relax a little. He kept up the friendly chatter, but eventually the questions he asked took a raunchier turn. Like, did I have a boyfriend? What was he like? What did we like to do? What was our favorite position? What? I silently panicked. Like, oh fuck, this guy is a creep after all. My instinct was to play along with this conversation while I tried to figure out what to do. I was pretty sure the drink he had in the console, in a convenience store cup, had more than pop in it, because you could see him physically getting looser as the drive went on. He kept asking gross questions, and I was so embarrassed for his nephew but still playing along. I just tried to breathe deeply to keep from having an anxiety attack and concentrated on extricating myself from his car. Eventually, he made it clear that he expected me to have sex with him in exchange for the ride. Door-to-door service, he said. Then it got worse. And find one of your girlfriends for my nephew, he said with this hyper-cheerful, also menacing smile that made my stomach drop. Yeah, I had to get away from this guy ASAP. At this point, we were about 20 minutes from the town I lived in. I was like, sure, and started making stuff up about a phantom hot, slutty friend I had. Then it finally hit me what I could do to get away. I put on my best come-hither smile and said to him, you know, I bet she's home now. Let's go straight over to her place when we get into town and get this date started. So I had him get off at my exit and asked if I could get some beer first for our date. In Montana, you could buy beer at gas stations, so I had him stop at a place a few blocks from where I lived. When he somewhat reluctantly went inside to buy beer, which I knew was in the back of the store, I opened my door and sprinted down the alley about a block and dove into a huge clump of bushes, folded myself up as tight as I could, and waited. I still had my knife, but now it was out of my sleeve. I was shaking and my heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would explode. I tucked my head into my knees and waited, listening for his car to come down the alley. When he had got to the gas station, it was about 4 p.m. and September, so there was still plenty of light. I stayed in those damn bushes until night fell, and then I finally sprinted home. His car never came down the alley, but I could hear him yelling for me. He sounded pissed. I got in my front door, locked and deadbolted it, and collapsed. Dirt and little leaves all over me. My roommate was like, "What the fuck happened to you?" I told her the abbreviated version and she said, "Why didn't you call me? I would have picked you up at the border." For context, I'm a 5'2" female who couldn't handle herself in a fight against a tissue. This just happened earlier today, and I can't think of a better place to vent about it. I work for USPS as a city carrier. For those that don't know, that means I walk, a lot, and through all types of neighborhoods. That being said, I worked in a relatively small town, and while there were some parts of it that were mostly run down, I've never had any bad encounters. Until today. The last bit of my route is 3 streets that run parallel to each other, so you walk up and down one street, drive the car to the next, and walk up and down it, etc. I'd say it's a low to middle income area, but nothing that makes you feel uneasy. Just a bunch of cheap college apartments and a few rundown houses. I'm beginning the first of my streets and I see this man, maybe 20 years old, riding his bike on the opposite side of the street, but going in the same direction I am. I thought nothing of it and went about my business. He ended up turning a corner at the end of the block and I forgot about him. I'm continuing walking down the same street when I notice this guy is right next to me again. I think it's a little bizarre, but figured he's taking laps around the block or something. Mind you, it's a solid 10 degrees outside today, with snow on the ground. So looking back, it's a bit strange that somebody would be out for a casual bike ride. But people have done weirder things. I'm finishing up at the last houses on the street and heading back to my van when I notice this dude is now going the same way I am again, even though I had turned around and started going the opposite direction now. I thought everything was a coincidence, until I drove down the next street. My first stop there is an apartment box. For those who might not know, that's one huge mailbox with several mailboxes inside of it. And all that means is I have to spend a decent amount of time there because there's maybe 16 people's mail I'm sorting out. While I'm doing that, the guy shows up again and just sits on his bike, blankly staring at me a few yards away while I work. I again gave this all the benefit of the doubt and think that maybe he's just waiting for me to finish the box so he could check his mail. As I lock it up and move on to the next house, I see him following behind me. When I stop at a house to deliver, he stops in the street and stares. It's at this point I decide there is something going on that I need to distance myself from, and go back to my van despite having almost the entire street left to deliver. I go back to the post office and tell my boss what had happened, and he agrees to have me deliver mail for another route on the opposite side of town. I gladly do this, and it takes maybe an hour and a half. I figured they'd trade off the mail and somebody else would go finish the small portion I had left with the creepy dude. Not so much. Once I get back to the office, I get asked to go finish the route from this morning. I was hesitant, but the point was made that it was hours later. It had started raining, because why would they be there 2 hours later on a bike in the rain? And that they'd send somebody to patrol the street. Fine. I head back out with a coworker following in another car behind me. I finish the street I had left earlier without any problem, so he heads back to the office. I move to my last street, feeling relatively at ease and start to wonder if I was overreacting this morning. I get to the end of my first half of the street, conveniently the farthest I can get away from my vehicle during this entire ordeal. And there he is. He pops out from behind a house on his bike, riding furiously in my direction. Panic sets in. I try to stay calm as I act as if I wasn't bothered by his presence at all, but he's riding right on my heels, speeding up to get in front of me and then just blankly staring through me again until I pass him and the following continues. I casually put my hands into my bag so my hands are free, that way I can get my mace as I call my boss. I didn't want this guy to know I was panicking and calling for help, so I pretended my boss is another city carrier just a few streets away. "Hey Dave, I know you're working just a couple blocks away from here and I have a couple really heavy packages I need you to help me deliver. I'm on Harrison Street now," etc. My boss was so confused. He started telling me how he wasn't a few streets over and that I was calling the wrong person while I'm practically yelling over him. "Oh yeah, I can get the numbers off the packages. "Hold on, let me get to my car. Just don't hang up yet. I can get them right now." Because I really didn't want him to hang up. This guy hasn't said a word to me, but is still right on my heels. Literally. Had I stopped walking, he would have ran my ankle over. I make it back to the car and tell my boss what is actually happening while this dude circles around me. As I drive away down the street, I see him racing on his bike behind me, chasing my car. I made a few turns down the blocks trying to see if I could lose him, and he's behind me the entire time until I reach the busy main road where he stops. The cops were called, and I was instructed once again to return to the street to finish the mail with the cops patrolling the area to hopefully bait this dude into getting caught. No surprise he didn't show up. Nothing changed for me at work. My bosses didn't seem to care what had happened to me, and unfortunately I am not in a position to just up and quit my job. Although I am looking for a new one, and I have ended up having to grin and bear being put back on the same route that all this happened on. It's been almost 2 weeks since the original encounter, and up until Wednesday I thought maybe the person was just trying to mess with me and now he was over it because I hadn't seen him again. January 10th. I was on my last street for the day and I was starting to loosen up since I was about to turn around and head back up the street to my vehicle when I saw him. The car is a little more than 600 feet away and he is standing on the sidewalk midway between me and it, just staring at me. I immediately try to calculate my options. I decided it was either attempt to get past him to my car, or pick a random house and start knocking hoping to God somebody answers the door quickly. Fight or flight kicked in and all I could think about was getting back into my locked car and getting the hell out. So that's what I tried to do. I crossed the street to create at least some distance between us, and was sort of relieved when I saw that he didn't follow suit. At this point he's still a good 300 feet away from me and I'm not sure why, but something is telling me to just avoid direct eye contact with him and keep walking. As I get closer to him, however, I could see that he was masturbating, right there on the sidewalk in broad daylight, just staring at me. Fear took over and I immediately started sprinting, but I was met with the hair-raising sound of his shoes echoing mine. He was screaming, "Hey, you, girl!" Something else, but due to my adrenaline and sheer panic, it just sounded like muffled noise that I can't recall. I thought about turning around to mace him as he was getting closer and closer to me, but at the moment running was working, and I didn't want to risk some horrible horror movie scene scenario when I trip. Luckily, running worked, and I got back to my car and locked it and called the police. I don't know why I didn't move the car immediately. I guess I was just too focused on getting officers there to help me out, but I don't know. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, this guy is circling my car, dick out, making obscene gestures and trying to get me to look at him. Finally, something clicks in my head that I'm not trapped there, and I can in fact just drive away. So I do. I go up the street and turn into a busy apartment complex to talk to the officer that showed up. I watched the guy turn around and run back inside the house he was originally standing in front of. So for those of us wondering how the hell he found me the second time in my last story, he lives right there on that street. Cops followed up with me later that evening and informed me that they had made contact with the individual, and that they'll be getting a hold of me soon. But so far that's all I've heard. As far as my bosses are concerned, they aren't taking anything seriously since the guy didn't physically touch me and have scheduled me back on that same route next week. I'm looking for a new job, so hopefully this is the last update you'll hear about this. Fingers crossed. During my first and only semester of college, my very good friend Jake was dating this girl Stacy that we knew in high school. For reference, I'm female and was 18 at the time, now 26. Now, many people back in high school did not like Stacy, and I was one of them. To me, she was the definition of a sketchy person. She was a pathological liar, and not even a good one, as her stories rarely added up and she would constantly contradict herself, sometimes within minutes after she spouted her lie. She was one of those girls that hated drama, yet it always magically seemed to follow her around anywhere she went. She was constantly in and out of relationships throughout high school, and would go out of her way to prove they were the crazy ones by spreading rumors about them and getting as much sympathy from everyone around her as she could. She always had to be the center of attention wherever she went. I remember during prom night she went dancing with her then boyfriend and he accidentally stepped on her foot while dancing, and she caused a huge scene about how he was physically abusing her. It was painful to watch. There's much more I could get into about this chick, but in general, she's just an extremely toxic person who nobody should be subjected to be in the presence of. It's also worth noting that she has a drug problem that she's often tried to hide. This will come into play later. Back to the story. Jake and Stacy had class together and hit it off rather quickly. Jake was skeptical at first, but when Jake brought up her reputation in high school, Stacy claimed that she was raped by an ex-boyfriend she had, and that's why she acted the way she did, and that she worked on getting better and was fine now. My friend, being incredibly insecure about being single and being way too trustworthy, believed her and they began dating soon after. The relationship was extremely dysfunctional and was the most rampant with emotional abuse and manipulation on her end, but the aspect I want to focus on is her constantly trying to squeeze money out of him for her aforementioned drug problem. Stacy would constantly ask Jake for small amounts of money here and there, usually ranging between $10 and $20. Jake didn't mind at all, as he bought into her story of her struggling financially, so he felt bad. But one day she asked him for $500 to cover rent, which he refused. She flipped out on him and didn't talk to him until she drunk dialed him late at night and began revealing that she was doing drugs, and it was all because of how terrible her life was and that he wasn't helping. I don't know why he didn't break up with her then and there, but the next day they talked it out and made up and the issue was dropped. Here's where everything finally comes to a head. It was around 10:30ish on a Friday night, and keep in mind that they've been dating for nearly 2 months at this point. I'm chilling in the living room with another friend of mine. We're sitting on the couch bullshitting about stuff going on in our lives, and I get a call from Jake. Jake explained to me that Stacy was hanging out at a friend's house for the day and asked if he could pick her up around midnight as the buses in the area stopped running after 8, and she needed to be in work at 9 the next morning. He said sure, and as the time he headed to leave to pick her up drew closer, his mother called him saying she was working overtime and wouldn't be out until midnight, and she had the car. He asked if I could drive with him to go pick Stacy up. I'll admit I would have rather left her to her own devices, but he sounded desperate and he is an amazing friend who would do anything for me, so I did him a solid and told him to start walking over to my house. He gets to my house about 40 minutes later. My friend went back to her house. She lived across the street from me, and Jake and I get in my car. He texts her that he's leaving now and that I'm driving him, to which she replies the dreaded, "K." I drove an 04 Subaru Impreza WRX STI at the time for reference. We reached Stacy's friend's house, which was located on the outskirts of town in a pretty sketchy neighborhood. The road was poorly lit, and to my luck the streetlight in front of Stacy's house was off. I refused to park in front of there as I didn't feel comfortable sitting in the dark, so I parked 3 houses down between 2 cars under a functional streetlight. Jake texts Stacy, "We're here." She doesn't respond. As we were waiting there, a truck drives by and I notice 4 men in the truck. I think it was an Oldsmobile, looking around for something. At first I figured maybe they were lost and looking for an address, but this thought was thrown out the window when not even 2 minutes later the truck drives by again, this time slower. The guy in the front passenger seat makes direct eye contact with me as the truck passes my car by. I tell Jake something is definitely wrong and to call Stacy so we can leave. He agrees and calls her, and it's dead quiet outside so I can hear the conversation. She answers and says, "Hey, where are you?" "We're down the block. Come outside," Jake said. "I'm looking outside and I don't see your car," she answered back. "We're in Shakira's car. It's a gray Subaru," Jake said back, and almost immediately after he said that the phone call drops. Jake just looks at his phone in complete confusion, wondering what the hell is going on. I'm starting to get extremely nervous now, between both the truck that was circling around before and now Stacy's sketchy behavior. I decide that if something's up, I'm not just going to be a sitting duck and stay parked on the road if shit goes south. I pull out of the spot and drive up in front of the house, and as I'm pulling out I hear a vehicle loudly in the distance behind us, and I look in my rearview mirror to see the truck from before now turning quickly driving up the block. I freak out and floor it out of the spot and begin speeding down the block. The truck catches up with me and Jake yells at me to turn and that they're trying to shoot the car. To my horror, I look behind and the guy in the back seat is leaning out the window with a gun in his hand, aiming at the car. I quickly turn and floor it down the road as they struggle to mirror what I did. I made another left turn, narrowly missing an oncoming car, and slammed on the gas. Luckily, I'm halfway down the block by the time they turn onto it. I'm surprised I was driving as well as I was at the time. Jake said I looked extremely calm and determined during all of this, but internally I was freaking out. I was worried they were going to run me off the road or we were going to get a bullet shot through the back of our skulls. I made another left turn and drove like a bat out of hell towards the highway. The truck turned onto the block when I was about a block down, but stopped and turned down another block when I got close to the highway. I turn onto the highway and merge into the next lane. A few minutes passed by with us going back and forth questioning who those guys were and what the hell they wanted, until Jake gets a call on his phone from Stacy. He picks it up, puts it on speaker, and shakingly says hello. "Where are you? I'm fucking waiting here for you," she screams. He explains the situation, to which she proceeds to call him a liar and that he's not actually here and was standing her up. Jake loses his shit and screams at her that he almost got killed and calls her out for her bizarre behavior throughout all of this. She starts yelling again, but she goes silent as we hear a door quickly open and someone loudly yells in the background on the phone, "They got away! Stacy, where the fuck are you?" Silence follows for the next few seconds before she hangs up the phone. Jake and I look at each other and Jake said, "She had something to do with this." Long story short, we spent the entire drive theorizing why this happened, and we think we may have hit what happened. Jake brought up her asking for money before she had asked for the $500. She probably needed the money to pay off a dealer, and when she didn't get it, she had to find another way. We think she set us up to head to that house to pick her up, and those guys were probably the dealer and his buddies, would conveniently show up looking to rob us of everything we had on us, and probably jack the car hoping it would cover her debt. She probably thought Jake was using his car and gave them the description of his car, not realizing we were using my car, which might explain why they circled the block in confusion, and why she hung up the phone immediately after Jake gave her a description of my vehicle, as she probably called them to update them. I dropped Jake off at his house and I went home. I know people say after scary encounters they're always shaken up, and their emotions are running in a million directions, but I was just emotionally drained. I felt like I just couldn't feel anything and just wanted to go home and go to bed, which was what I immediately did when I got home. I filed a police report the next morning on those guys, and they said they'd look into it. But I never heard anything after I filed the report, so who knows what they've been up to ever since. As far as Stacy goes, our theory was further solidified when Jake saw her in class on Monday, where she approached him and berated him for Friday night, claiming she walked all the way home and had her phone and wallet stolen by some druggies. Jake basically called her out on that whole night, claiming she set us up to get robbed, to which she denied and called him crazy. He told her they were done, and she just yelled, "Fine," and walked to the back of the room. The druggies were probably the dealer and his friends who robbed her to cover the debt. To our surprise, she never attempted to contact us again, and kept her distance, probably because she knew we were onto her and wanted to keep the heat off of her. After I dropped out, I never saw her again, and last I heard about her was from Jake, where he told me she developed a long-distance relationship with some guy online and dropped out halfway through the semester to move to Massachusetts to live with him. As far as I know, that's the last anyone I know ever saw or heard from her. Overall, I'm happy I trusted my instincts and picked up on the fact that something was wrong, as this encounter may have been a different outcome. In hindsight, they most likely weren't going to kill us. But that's easier to say after the fact because at the time we didn't know what their intentions were. And for all we know, they may have even had more planned than just to rob us. This was the first of quite a few scary and creepy experiences I've had in my life, and this actually wasn't the scariest one for me. But that's another story for another time. So, Stacy, and the foreman in the truck. My life has been going perfectly fine since we met. Please do me a favor and don't ruin it by crossing paths with me again. Thank you. I'm a 27-year-old female, but this happened when I was 13. The summer of 2003, I went on a cross-country road trip to California from Indiana for a family reunion with my mom, grandma, and aunt. We went all over and hit all the touristy spots on the way. It was a lot of fun and a great experience, except for our first stop. For our first stop, we spent 5 days in Las Vegas, Nevada. The hotel we stayed at was an off-the-strip place called the Excalibur. The front wasn't facing a busy street, and besides being next to the Luxor, everywhere around it was dingy and barren. We park and get our luggage, and my mom thinks it would be a great idea for her 4'11", 90-pound string bean daughter to carry one of Grandma's suitcases, which happened to be the biggest one we all had, with it coming up to my shoulder and almost as wide as two of me. And oh yeah, no wheels. Since my pleas and complaints that the suitcase was too heavy for me to carry went ignored, and Grandma forbade me from dragging it, I had to lift the thing in front of me and waddle, making me very slow and fall in line behind the three of them. I firmly believe this is what made me a target in the first place. As we made for the door, I noticed a man sitting on a stone bench by the door holding a newspaper open in front of him, but not looking at it. Instead, he was looking right at me. He was tall and lanky with a scraggly unshaven face and greasy salt and pepper hair that was balding on the top. I told the adults, but they told me to brush it off and not to look at him because it would draw his attention. Yeah, like that hadn't already happened. I didn't want to seem unnerved, so I shot him a dirty look and kept walking behind my mom, with him not taking his eyes off me at all. Right before I stepped through the doors, I saw the man get up suddenly and head for the door, which I told my mom, but again she dismissed it. Inside, the lobby was packed wall to wall with people who were just standing around not doing anything. There weren't even any machines to play on in the lobby, so I don't understand why so many people were just standing around. There was a roped-off walkway so people could check in at the counter. The walkway was about 2 feet wide and kinda meandered around and through the throng of people, making lots of unnecessary turns. It was also very loud because everyone was talking at once. I'm telling you all this so you can better picture what happened next. I had only gone down the walkway a few feet when I felt the presence of someone behind me. Like when someone's close to you but not touching, how you can kind of feel them there. Anyway, I turn my head slightly and I see the creep's face mere inches from mine. I pick up the pace whilst trying not to panic and do something stupid. I get right behind my mom and started calling to her, trying to get her attention. She must have been annoyed with me because she didn't even glance back. Not for a long time. She kept on walking and I had no choice but to trail after her as fast as I could. I couldn't drop the suitcase and run because there was no space and I would have to climb over it and could not afford to stop. I could see in my peripheral vision that the creep had his hand hovering around the side of my head, ready to muffle my screams, and I bet if I had looked down I would have seen his other hand hovering, waiting to grab me. I couldn't look around me though, or do anything that could potentially slow me down. I knew that the moment I stopped he would take me. All I could do was keep moving forward as fast as I could while yelling, "Mom! Mom! Mom!" at the top of my lungs. Like Stewie but more urgent. Think about that for a minute. Being 13 years old and about to be grabbed by some pervert who probably wants you for his child's sex ring. Being literally surrounded by people with no one noticing even though he's being obvious. And worst of all, being right behind your own mother who won't even turn around because she thinks you're just whining. I know for a fact she was thinking that way because I confronted her about it later. The whole event took less than 5 minutes, but it was the longest and scariest 5 minutes of my life. Finally, when it felt like my strength was about to give out, as we were approaching the check-in counter, Mom decided to turn around. At first she looked down at me over her shoulder, looking ready to tell me to shut the hell up. Then a split second later she looks behind me and does a 180 and stares the guy down like she's gonna rip his throat out. Which promptly causes him to do a 180 of his own and power walk his ass out of the building. After that, she yanked the suitcase out of my hands and shoved me forward, telling me I'm being too slow. Yeah, my mom was never the motherly type, to put it lightly. My mom reported the incident to the person at the counter, and the clerk said that they've had several complaints throughout the day about the same man. What the hell, LVPD? Anyway, we get to the room and all have a good cry about it, and Mom swears that she knew he was there the whole time and that she was only waiting for the right moment to confront him. Which I didn't buy at all, but was too shocked and emotional at the time to argue. Later, she admitted she thought I was complaining about having to carry the suitcase. The rest of the trip went great, but that event will always haunt me. These events happened when I was 9 through 14 years old. I'm 25 now, and female. My family had recently moved into a new home and I loved that house, but I've had the most terrifying paranormal experiences in my life there. It started with little things, like the feeling of being watched to things turning up missing and showing up where I didn't leave them. Later, the TV would turn off or on at random, or the channel would change. One night while I was in my older brother's room watching him play Super Mario Bros., the strobe light he had went off. It flashed rapidly as me and my brother stared in confusion. I got up and cut it off and sat down, not thinking much of it. A few minutes later, it went off again. "Just unplug it," my brother said, getting annoyed. I got up once again and reached for the plug. I stopped and gasped as I saw the light wasn't even plugged into the wall. I turned the light off and threw it in my brother's closet. I should mention that during the summers I would often be home alone as both of my parents and my brother worked during the days. My neighbor would check up on me every now and then, but besides that I was left alone from about 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. I'd constantly see dark shadows out of the corner of my eyes and started getting really bad anxiety. One morning I walked into the long hallway that connected 3 of the rooms and 1 of the restrooms. At the end of the hallway I saw some dark mass that looked like some kind of messed up dog. It turned its head towards me, revealing 2 large red glowing eyes that pierced through me. I stood frozen with fear until the figure ran into my parents' room. After a few seconds of just standing there in fear, I slowly walked to the end of the hallway and pushed open my parents' door. There was nothing there. Feeling freaked out, I went into the kitchen to make something to eat to calm my nerves. I reached towards the drawer to get a knife. As I pulled the drawer open, the bottom cabinet swung open with so much force that it hit my knee and I fell yelling in pain. "What the hell?" I was so upset I didn't want to eat anymore. I felt so scared and alone. I decided to take a shower instead. I ran the hot shower and just sat in the tub trying not to cry. Suddenly I felt a hand grab my left shoulder. I felt my heart drop as I reached for my shoulder. Nothing. I turned around. Nothing. I finished my shower and climbed out. As I put my towel on, I looked up into the mirror, and to my absolute horror, written in the steam read, "You are not alone." I started crying. I went to my neighbor's house until my parents came home. That weekend, my friend Liz spent the night. We stayed up late, and after everyone went to sleep, we sat in my bed talking about guys in school. Liz was in the middle of a sentence when we heard knocking in the hallway. It sounded like someone was running up and down the hallway, banging on the walls. I thought it was my brother trying to scare us, so I got up to tell him off. I grabbed my door and tried to open the door, but it was locked. "Did you lock my door?" I asked Liz. "No," she responded nervously. I unlocked it and opened my door. I turned the hallway light on and looked around. All the other doors in the hall were closed, including the one leading to the living room towards my brother's room, and the hallway was empty. I closed my door and told Liz there was no one there. I sat back down and we started talking about what it might have been. I was telling her everything I had experienced in the house and she jumped and screamed. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Something just grabbed my shoulder," she yelled. As I was telling her I felt that before, I too felt the familiar grab on my shoulder. I jumped up also and told her we should try to get some sleep. Nothing else happened that night, and needless to say, she never spent the night again. Things continued to escalate after that, from hearing voices to the floor creaking at night, and more. I never told anyone because I didn't want to sound crazy. We moved out of that house at the beginning of my freshman year of high school. I live with my boyfriend now, about 10 minutes away from my old house. Every time I pass by that house, it still gives me the chills. My name is Matthew, and I'm a 21-year-old EMT that works at a retirement community during the night in case of an emergency. I work from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and on the weekends I completely work alone. Other than myself, there is one other EMT who works on nights that I don't. During the nights on the weekdays, we have a security guard who works with us from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. The other EMT I will call Travis, and I will call my security guard Marcus, just for their personal security. One night I had Marcus with me and we were walking the exterior of the community while checking on some of the company vehicles to see if they had been left accidentally unlocked. Marcus was standing closer to the street and was just staring down the road while I pulled on the door handles. Whenever we leave the front desk, we have an iPhone that belongs to the company that we take with us. That way we can still answer any potential calls during the night and respond to life alerts that may come through from some of our residents while we were out doing whatever it may be. I had a couple of vehicles to check on, but before I could finish, a phone call comes through on the guard phone. 2 different numbers can pop up. If it is one certain number, it would mean that the call was coming from within the community, but if it was another number, then it meant that the call was coming from outside of the community. This number was the one that meant that it was coming from within the building, most likely a resident with a question or concern. I answer the phone and give the usual response. "Front desk, this is Matthew." No answer or noise from the other end. I assume that whoever was on the other end of the call simply didn't hear me. When you work in a retirement community, you get used to the odd quirks and mannerisms that come with dealing with them on a regular basis. I answered out on the phone again, but simply just said, "Hello?" but in a much larger voice, hoping that it would help someone with a hearing problem. Muffle, and then a soft static. I waited a few more seconds and then I figured that it must have been an accident that they called me, so I simply hung up and assumed that they would call again if they needed me, and if it was an emergency, they had their life alert necklace with them. Within 5 seconds of hanging up the phone, I get another call that said it was coming from within the community again. I answer, "Front desk, this is Matthew." I hear a soft shuffle. I ask who it is and I get nothing but silence again. Even though there is no noise, I get the feeling that the phone is on speaker. Something about the way the phone static shifts is what I picked up on, and made me feel like I was speaking through speakerphone rather than just the simple receiver. I hang up after getting no response and got slightly irritated that someone could be messing with their phone. Before I put the phone back in my pocket, I get another call. I'm flat out annoyed at this point, and ignore my casual and cheery tone when I answer the phone and simply use a flat-toned inflection. "Front desk, it's Matthew." More static. I hang up before giving a second response and turn towards Marcus. "Hey, we need to head inside and switch the guard phone back to the desk phone so I can see who this is." The guard phone doesn't tell me what room is calling me, but if I go from the guard phone back to the front desk phone, the display tells me what exact room number is calling. After I tell Marcus this, he continues to stare off down the street before nodding his head and agreeing. As we walk away from the vehicles and head back towards the front of the community, my phone continues to ring off the hook from the same number. I get increasingly annoyed with each phone call, while also getting more anxious to find out who it is. When we get about 40 feet away from the vehicles, Marcus leans slightly in and says, "I think we are being watched by someone on the corner of the road. He had a big white dog and we stared each other down while you were on the phone. I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but I just kept watching him to see if he would try anything." I just nodded my head and glanced back at the corner, to which I saw nobody there, and decided it was nothing. The area we were in had some group homes and condos nearby, so I'm not entirely surprised that someone could be outside about this time. A couple minutes later, we reached the front desk again. All the meanwhile, I keep getting repeat phone calls on the guard phone. I switch, pressing a few buttons to send the calls from the guard phone back to the front desk. Within seconds, the phone lights up and on the display I see, room 2026, and I pick up the phone. Finally having some answer, I regain my calm and answer with my usual friendly demeanor again. "Front desk, this is Matthew." I get nothing aside from breathing or fabric friction from last time, and the silence in the background. Slightly disappointed I still didn't get any response, I switched the receiver back to the guard phone and grabbed my keyring and decided to go check out why they kept calling me. I told Marcus that we needed to go check on whoever was calling, and find out why they were calling. After working here for a while, you start to know who lives in what room. While walking through the halls and heading to the elevator to get to the second floor, I kept racking my brain to think of who lives in that room, all while the guard phone continues to ring again and again, while answering occasionally to see if it was a different resident. It never was. I get to the front door of room 2026, and I knock a few times and state, "It's the front desk. Is everything okay?" No response. The room had a nameplate next to it, which made me believe that someone had resided within there. I wasn't familiar with the name, so I knocked again and stated that if I didn't get a reply that I was going to come inside. I was still receiving phone calls on the guard phone, all while being outside the door. I waited 10 seconds before pulling out my master key and unlocking the door. I was unnerved when I opened the door completely. The room was entirely vacant. When you open the door, to the left is a kitchen and a living room, and to the right there was a hallway that had a bathroom, 2 bedrooms, and a closet. Marcus looked at me with a disturbed expression and said that he would wait outside, as he was too afraid to go in. I took out the guard phone and answered it while I was walking into the room. I still got no response, and I didn't even bother giving my greeting. Marcus let the door close, but not latch. I looked into the living room after switching on a kitchen light, and noticed that there was no landline plugged into the wall. I became increasingly afraid and more anxious than ever. I stood still for a minute trying to make sense of it before I realized that the phone call had ended, but not by me. I took the phone away from my ear and looked at it, and as I expected, it rang again. I answered and walked around the apartment again. I went down the hall. While nearing one of the bedrooms, I started hearing more clearly over the phone. The questionable breathing turned into definite breathing. "Hello?" I said softly and curiously. I actually get what I believe is my first response from the number. It sounded like someone shooting air out of their nose, like when you see something funny on your phone, but instead of laughing, you just exhale a little harder. I walk into the first bedroom, and after opening the door, I get a big rush of cold air. I thought it was weird because the entire apartment only had one air conditioning unit tied to it, but it was obviously colder in this room. I left the door open and stepped inside while listening to the phone for more clues or potential breathing again. Without my knowledge, the phone call had ended again. Hovering my thumb where the answering button would be, I waited for it to call again, and it does within 5 seconds. I decided not to answer and just kept looking around the room. I get a cold shiver when I walked deeper inside the room and still didn't see anything, but the temperature feels at least 30 degrees less than what it was in the hallway, and it was oddly static. I can't properly explain it, but I never noticed it until I experienced it. It felt as if the air in the room was stiff and unmoving, as opposed to the air outside or in any other room for that fact, where it would normally be loose and generally normal. I grabbed the closet handle and slid the doors to the side to see if there was a phone or even a plug-in in the closet. There was nothing inside the closet, but after a couple of seconds of leaving the closet open, the phone stopped ringing and the air felt alive again. It still felt really cold, but it became less awkward to breathe it in. After connecting the dots in my head after a few seconds, my legs felt heavy as my spine began shivering with fear, and I walked out of the room and slammed the door behind me. Marcus could hear that the phone had suddenly stopped ringing and noticed that I had a stunned look on my face as I told him, "Go back to the desk." And we both hurried back. I explained to him exactly what had happened, and he began getting just as freaked out as I am. I ignored going to that floor again for the night. To solidify that I wasn't just crazy, I have Mario feel my shirt and hands so that he could notice how cold that room actually was compared to everywhere else I was. We didn't get any phone calls for the rest of the night, and still am a little freaked out that all the calls had ended. Whatever it was, I really hope it doesn't come back to that room again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you email it to yourmaker6260@gmail.com. And if you would like to help support the channel, I would highly recommend you check out the sponsor button. It's got a couple cool perks and you will also get a channel badge. I will catch everyone in the next video, and if you know any service members, make sure you thank them. I hope everyone has a great day, and just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. Bad bye. A while ago, I was staying in an upscale hotel in the safe area of a large Midwestern city. I am a 16-year-old female, and I was in a room all by myself with my parents a few doors down. In theory, this wasn't unsafe by any means, but I had bad luck on this particular trip. Our first night there passed without incident. Me in my room, and my parents in theirs. I watched a pay-per-view movie and ate way too much from the snack bar. I didn't have any reason to feel unsafe. The next morning, we did the usual tourist stuff that one does when visiting a new city. As we ate breakfast in the hotel restaurant, I noticed a man who looked to be in his 60s staring right at me for an abnormally long amount of time. I won't lie. As a young, decently attractive female, I'm used to getting the occasional inappropriate look from a guy, so I ignored it and chalked it up to him either being a perv or thinking I looked like his granddaughter or something. The next night, my parents allowed me to meet up with a friend for dinner who lived in the area. He met me in the hotel lobby and we had a really nice dinner, and then we went back to the hotel for drinks. Yes, I'm underage. I had a drink. Shoot me now. Coincidentally, the same man who had been eyeing me earlier was at the bar. This time I knew I didn't remind him of his granddaughter. Even with my buff guy friend next to me, his eyes traced every curve of my body. I felt unsettled and mentioned it to my friend, Ethan, who glanced over and also seemed to be really weirded out by how obvious this guy was leering. We left the bar quickly, and by now it was around 12:30 a.m. Ethan walked me to the elevators of the hotel, and once I pushed the button, left. I wish I would have asked him to stay, because no sooner had he walked away that creep from earlier came rounding the corner and stood there waiting with me for the elevator. I felt so uncomfortable knowing he would be seeing what floor I was going to, but it hadn't occurred to me to get off on a different floor at the time. And even if it did, he planned on following me, so it would have just been a bad move. When we were in the elevator together, I tried to keep my eyes averted from his, but they literally bore into my body. He kept trying to step closer and I kept backing up, too scared to even speak. What freaked me out more was he hadn't pressed a separate elevator button, so he planned on getting off when I did. When I got to my floor, I almost ran to my room, and the guy just stood at the end of the hallway waiting to see where I was going. I stayed in my room for 15 minutes until I was sure he was gone, before I told my parents what had happened. They were freaked out and told the hotel staff, but there was no sign of the guy and it was really late, so I just locked my door and tried to go to sleep. I had almost drifted off when I heard a knock at my door. Now, I'm not an idiot, so I didn't just go and open the door at nearly 2 a.m. Instead, I turned on a light and froze. At this point, my intuition had kicked in, and I knew it was the same guy. I was near tears, but the knocking continued, harder and harder, so I frantically shouted and asked who it was. The voice that replied to me was the most chilling thing I have ever heard. High-pitched but growly, almost giggly, and so distant I could barely describe it. "It's hotel staff. Please let me in." A look through the peephole confirmed it was the same creepy old guy. I locked myself in the bathroom and called my dad's phone. He has a habit of always keeping his ringer on, so he answered almost immediately and I tried to tell him what was wrong through my tears. "The guy from before," I managed, "is at my door." And what happened next gives me nightmares. My dad naturally went into superhero mode and opened his door to find the old man in just a robe, masturbating. It's pretty obvious to piece together what he was planning, and I still dream about it and have severe PTSD from it. My dad slugged the dude in the face and made sure he didn't move an inch while my mom called hotel security. We pressed charges and the guy is in prison now on what I think were assault charges with intent to commit rape. But I could be wrong. To clear up a few things, when dealing with the hotel management, concierge, and police that night, we discovered that this man had been trying to get a key to my room even before the elevator, him seeing where it was, incident. He hadn't used my name or anything. He just said, "Can I please get the key to room 332? With no other explanation. What I think is that he knew where I was staying before the elevator incident, but wanted to make it known to me that he knew. Otherwise, I'm not sure how he knew which room I was staying in. It unnerves me to this day, thinking that he'd probably seen me go in and out without me noticing. Also, a 16-year-old gets served at a bar with a fake ID, just for everyone wondering. This happened some time ago, but nothing even close has happened since, and it took me a long time to realize the gravity of the situation. I lived in a share house with 3 other guys at the time. However, they were all at their various jobs, and I worked night shifts at a nearby gas station. I was in bed after a shift, fast asleep, and I was startled awake, not really knowing why. There was a period of about 15 through 20 seconds after I began to wake up of silence, followed by a knock at the door. At this point, having just woken up, I was still trying to get my bearings. However, I realized that I must have woken up from someone knocking at the door. Another 15 through 20 seconds pass in silence, and I start to think, maybe it was just a door-to-door salesperson, or charity collections, or whatever, and figured they must have left. So I started to relax a little at this point. Then the entire front of the house starts to shake and I can hear what sounds like someone hitting the front wall with a sledgehammer. At this point, I really can't process what's going on. My first thoughts are, since we lived across from the train station, this must be because of activity at the station, like maybe a freight train grumbling past. I don't know why I thought that, but in my mind it was the most logical thing. All of a sudden, the banging stops momentarily. It resumes another 5 seconds later. By this time, less than 2 minutes had passed since I woke up. However, it felt like my brain had only just started working. I realize now that at the very least something was happening to the front of the house that I didn't like. The bangs were very loud, and the house was pretty old and warped, almost entirely made of wood. At this point, I started to panic because I could feel the shaking frame starting to give under the blows. So I did the only thing I could think of and started yelling and screaming unsteadily at the front of my house. From memory, I think I frantically yelled something like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It was a fight or flight response. I didn't even have time to think to formulate a plan, or go out the back door, or call the police. Almost as suddenly as it started, the banging stopped and I heard some footsteps outside running away. For some reason, this gave me confidence and I looked around for a weapon to grab before I went outside to confront whoever this was. Really fucking stupid, I know. I remember thinking the handle felt a little weird when I opened the front door. However, by the time I got outside, they were gone. Nowhere to be seen. Almost as if they had never been there at all. I should mention at this point, I was getting about 2 hours of sleep a day before my graveyard shifts, so I was a little sleep deprived, and I knew I wasn't really thinking clearly, so I started to question whether anything happened at all. When I went outside, I looked for any signs of damage to verify for sure whether this really happened or not. Then I saw the front door and realized why the handle had felt odd. The flimsy wooden door had been struck next to the handle repeatedly and started to splinter. If they had kicked the center of the door, I'm sure their foot would have gone right through. But they were kicking next to the handle, closer to the frame where it was slightly stronger. 1 or 2 more kicks and they would have been inside. The police came later and I filed a report. However, nothing was stolen, and there was nothing stolen from the unlocked garage beneath the bedrooms. They were either too stupid to check the downstairs first, or they weren't looking to steal anything. I am an 18-year-old male. I have an extremely large Alsatian dog which needs to be walked 3 times a day for about an hour. On one of these walks, I was wearing an extremely large padded black leather jacket with black skinny jeans. This is important later. My house is close to a large state park, and I walk my dog here daily. I always take a secluded path off the main path. There are 2 of these paths which run parallel to each other and are about 20 meters apart, One path runs adjacent to the river, over of which there is an abandoned house/manor. The other path is higher up and overlooks the path next to the river. This is also important. So now on to my story. I left my house and started walking my dog at around 1 p.m. I take the main path until reaching the secluded paths. I take the path closest to the river so my dog can go swimming. As I get around 1 mile in, I hear people talking from up and around the corner of the path. I put my dog on a tight leash as I slowly walk up the hill, with a 10-meter drop down to the river, and around the corner. The hill's gradient begins to decline. As I look for the source of the noise, I see a lady in a pink blazer sitting on the ground talking to another man on the ground. As I approached, I realized something was wrong. The woman was smiling and the man was sitting halfway down the hill, almost in the river, with his bike upturned next to him. It appeared to be some sort of accident. The path was not slippery, but it was steep and narrow. The drop at the section of this path was about 8 meters of sharp rocks into a white river. The pink lady had the following conversation with the man. "Someone is coming." The man grumbles something. "How did you know that?" the lady asks. My dog started crying and walked just off the path to investigate, but I pulled him back. I asked if everything was okay. She gives no response. She just smiles and looks towards the older balding man. We stare at each other for a second, and I get a better look at her before continuing to walk down the path. Let me describe this lady in even more detail. She wore a bright pink blazer with camouflage trousers and large hunting boots. She had to be at least in her late 40s. If any of you have seen the Harry Potter films, just think of Dolores Umbridge, and you'll have a good idea of what I witnessed. After 10 minutes, the path forks back, or diverges, to continue on. I decide to walk back, not on the same path. I end up back at the main path. I start to walk away back home, but I get a feeling in my gut that I should go back. After all, that man could have been injured and was just intimidated by my sudden presence and my grotesquely large dog. As I walk back down the path, I see the pink lady stop 2 boys, no older than 12, and say something about him being stuck and he needs their help. She would have had to leave the man there. Instead of going on the path to where the man was situated, I took the back path which overlooked the path below and the river. As I look down, I am shocked. The man is moving his bike to a steeper part of the path and lies down as if he was injured. This lady was luring these boys to this man who was not injured, fully capable of movement, and who had just staged an accident. I tried to phone 101, the non-emergency number in my country, but I had no minutes left. The pink lady is nowhere to be seen. I decide I must loop back around and walk down that path. It takes me 10 minutes to do so. As I get around there, the lady and man are arguing. The conversation went like this. "Now where are we meant to go?" "If you weren't such a spooky bitch, these boys would have come in." "You were the one who said we couldn't tackle the big guy." At this moment, I go into a panic. I make my presence clear and approach them quickly. I must get past them as quickly as I can. I pull my dog closer to me as I'm passing them on the narrow path, less than 1 meter in length. The man gives me the dirtiest look, while the lady gives me the toothiest yellow smile I've ever seen. I'm not afraid to admit it. I was scared. I ran as quickly as I could out of the woods. When I do get out, I reach a member of the local government while walking past the parking lot and tell him what I had witnessed and the conversation. Fortunately, the boys the lady was talking to had already reported the suspicious activity. He tells me the children had told him that the lady was claiming her husband had fallen off the path and needed some help. The boys didn't fall for it. He had called the police as soon as the boys had told him. I soon left, and will not be returning to that part of the woods for a long time. After the event, The police, which had been informed that I had a Facebook post and status, had contacted me and asked me to remove the post until everything blew over. They weren't caught. However, they have personally attacked me. They've damaged mine and my parents' property and harassed us. Our sitting room windows have been smashed twice since the event. I know at least one of the events was them, because of a typed note that was tied onto a stone. The stone that was smashed through the window. The note has been handed in to the police, and I can't discuss it yet. This happened to me in 2008. This was a huge thing to my friends and family, and I didn't really talk about it back then as it scared the fuck out of me. But it was a while ago, and is a really well-known creepy story among myself and family and friends. But I think I may as well share it, as it is admittingly terrifying. I was living with my parents and sister in Brisbane, Australia at the time, 2008, which means I was 19. I remember my dad had just got Foxtel, cable TV in Australia, but only the TV in the lounge room could use the cable box, and I really wanted to somehow get cable in my room without paying $99 or whatever it was for a new box. So Dad one day went out and bought an AV transmitter/receiver. It was basically a two-piece bit of hardware where you would plug in this tiny box into the cable TV in the lounge room, and it would transmit a video signal to the receiver, connected to the TV in my room. So one Saturday, I decided to connect it. My younger sister, 16 at the time, was the only other person home at the time, upstairs in her room. My room was downstairs. I opened the box and connected it up. At first I was going back and forth, trying to get the cables right, trying to get the channel right, etc. But no luck. Until I finally got something. I remember just sitting there and something started fuzzing in. This is where things start to feel like a horror movie. I remember thinking, oh, here we go, and waiting to see the picture come in clearly. As it started fuzzing in, I remembered that this whole time the cable set top box wasn't even on, and that's why it wasn't working this whole time. But then why was I getting a signal? It seemed to all hit me at once. As I realized the box was off, the picture fuzzed in, and I saw a bed. I freaked the fuck out, as at first I thought it was my bed. I had recently seen Saw 2, and remembered that scene where she turns on the TV and it's a camera filming her in her apartment. That was the first thing I thought of. I sprinted upstairs to my sister, absolutely terrified. I told her to come downstairs and take a look. She came down and we both realized it wasn't my bed. We didn't know whose bed it was, or how I was getting the signal. Obviously it was the AV receiver picking up a camera signal, but we were just so confused as to who/what it was for. Eventually my parents came home and we concluded it must be the neighbor, or someone living close by, for us to be receiving the signal. We waited until around 6 p.m., and then someone came into the room. My dad recognized it as one of our neighbors. We didn't know what the camera was for, but we assumed it had something to do with fidelity. Either his wife or he had set it up to watch the other one and see if they were cheating. Either this, or to tape themselves having sex. We entertained the idea that he was a murderer and would film murdering people in his room, but just to freak each other out. We'd always make jokes about how one night we'll turn it on and it'll just be his face with clown makeup on staring at the camera waving, and then him walking out of the bedroom with a knife. This never happened. But what did happen was still super creepy. We connected to the signal for over a week, but after a few days the novelty kind of wore off. We felt a bit weird watching it, and just resigned to the explanation that it was to catch his wife cheating. Until one day we turned it on, and realized what we had discovered. Our neighbors were having a bunch of renovations done to their house. During weekdays they'd be out, and there would be workers at the place pretty much all day. It had been like this for over a month. We started watching the feed and saw a man walking into their room. It was the plumber who had been there regularly for the renovations. We didn't think anything of it, until he started opening drawers. I called out to my mom, only person home at the time, and we started watching it. He started getting the wife's underpants and sniffing them, doing all that creepy shit. At first we were like, oh my god, how embarrassing. He's being filmed. Will the neighbors see this somehow? But then what happened next was truly terrifying. He slowly walked over to the camera and looked right down the lens. We were convinced that he knew we were watching. Mom immediately called Dad. I kept watching. He started fiddling with it and then put it back down. I told Mom that I don't think he knew we were watching, but he's definitely the guy that put the camera there. Dad came home, and by this time the plumber had left. Much to Mom's pleading, Dad went over to the neighbors to tell them what we saw. Mom wanted to completely stay out of it and was terrified, understandably. When we told the neighbors, they had no idea what we were talking about. They allowed Dad to go to their room, and what he found that was holding the camera was an installed device in the wall that was designed to monitor water usage, which was completely normal at the time, as Brisbane had been hit with a drought recently and there was a lot of water restrictions. Still is now, I think. The plumber had installed this into the wall, but had fitted a camera behind it in the wall to watch the bed. Immediately they called the police, who came over and conducted an investigation. For the next week or so we didn't hear much about it. I spent most of the time telling my friends, showing them pictures, but truthfully my whole family was scared every night. It was just very creepy thinking that that kind of stuff could be hidden in our house. Chances are there weren't, but it was still really scary. After a couple of weeks, my mom was speaking to the wife next door and asked what had happened with it all. The wife said the police found out he would at night come to our street and sit in his car, which had really tinted windows, and watch them on his laptop. When Mom told me this, I got the biggest shivers. The reason was, besides the obvious of a creepy dude sitting in his car watching people through a hidden camera, was because on multiple nights when I had driven home late from my girlfriend's or walked home drunk after a night out, I remember seeing a station wagon always about 30 meters down the street from our house. It was never there during the day, always at night. I'd always walk past it and look at my reflection in the windows, assuming no one was inside. I was always so confused by whose car it was, but literally never thought anything of it. It still scares me so much that it was just this creepy fucking plumber sitting back there on a laptop watching a hidden camera stream of my neighbors. Anyway, that's my story. It's all true and still creeps the hell out of me to this day, but my friends and I have a good laugh about it. This began maybe 2 months ago. At an aunt's party, my sister comes up to me and says that she thinks someone has been coming into her house in the middle of the night. My sister has always been easily scared, so at first I was skeptical. I asked her how she knew someone had been in her house, whether she had actually seen anyone. She told me she hadn't seen anyone, but she says that she knows for a fact someone was in her house. She then went on to explain she has a skybox downstairs that streams to her bedroom television. The first time it happened, she said she heard the TV was being used, so she turned on her TV and someone was flicking through the channels. I still didn't really buy what she was saying, but she did seem genuinely afraid. She claimed it had been going on for 3 months on and off. To put her mind at ease, I told her I'd stay at her place for a few nights and wait to see if any guy comes. I took my younger brother along just to be safe. In all, we stayed at her place for 4 nights. In those 4 nights, nothing unusual happened. Me and my brother were convinced she was going crazy. Me and my brother decided we had stayed long enough and told her that we had to go home. She got extremely upset about this. I reassured her and told her to call the police the next time it happened. She had called the police once before about the guy, and they turned up to find no one in the house. I said she could call me anytime she wanted, and left for work. 2 days later, she calls at 11:30 p.m. and claimed he was downstairs in her house right now. I asked her how she knew, and she said he's walking around the house. She was whispering and crying. I knew she wasn't making this up. I could tell from her voice. I called my brother and told him to meet me at her house. I was on the phone with her the entire drive over to her place. I live 10 minutes away. When I got there, my brother was parked outside. We both went to the back of the house. I was still on the phone with my sister. The first floor of the house was lit solely by the TV in the living room. As we approached the patio door, we saw that a man was sitting on the couch facing us. We were frozen solid, and my sister noticed that we went quiet and started asking what was wrong and if we could see him. I told her to stay quiet and that we had it in hand. I then hung up and called the police to explain the situation. The guy hadn't moved from the couch at all. The TV turned off while we were waiting for the cops. Me and my brother majorly freaked out when it happened. We couldn't see anything downstairs. Then the hallway light turned on, meaning someone was on the stairs. We opened the patio door and ran up the stairs and caught the guy with his ear to her door. We kicked the shit out of him and got my sister out of the house. He had a knife in his coat pocket. The cops came maybe 10 minutes later. He could have killed her if he wanted to, which is fucking outrageous. It turns out the guy was one of my mom's old boyfriends who had lived with us for a while in the 90s. He had always been fond of my sister, but we had never suspected it to be him. He hadn't contacted any of us for nearly a decade. My sister has moved back in with my mom and is undergoing therapy to get over what had happened. Our stepdad, as he liked to call himself, was given 3 years in prison. We are doing our best to cut all ties with the man. I'm a nurse and I live in a small city. I was driving home from work at 2 a.m. The roads were totally deserted and it was a freezing night. I didn't live far from work, maybe a couple of miles. I'm driving down a residential street around the corner from my house and I see a man laying face down in the street. Now remember, I'm a nurse. My first thought was, great, gotta help this guy out. I was coming off a long shift and falls happen all the time. As I slowed down the car, I suddenly realized what an idiot move that was. I'm a 100-pound woman and I don't carry any weapons. I thought I should do something to help the guy, so I called 911 as I drove past him and slowed to a stop at the end of the block. While I was stopped at the light, I explained to the dispatcher that there was a man in the road who might need assistance. All of a sudden, I hear a loud banging from the driver's side window. I screamed and looked over. A man was pounding on my window and jiggling the handle of my car. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that there was no man laying in the street. Still on the phone with 911, I screamed, "I'm so scared," to the dispatcher and floored it through the red light. I quickly told him what had happened. And I see the man. Me the hell out that he wasn't alone. Always lock your doors. And carry mace. My father was a stereotypical deadbeat drug addict. He injected, snorted, smoked anything he could get his hands on, and was prone to extreme violence. There are a million stories I could tell, but I'm going to focus on one in particular for this story. Despite what my mom was going through, she stayed with my father because of me. She desperately wanted to have a loving home life where I could experience the joy of having both my parents. I didn't really realize how bad things were until I got older and really thought back on the past. My father would buy drugs before he fed me, take me to crack houses in terrible neighborhoods, bring me to houses of his friends, and left me to entertain myself while he cheated on my mother. I woke up almost every morning to him being covered in his own piss and vomit. I could never understand why my mother was so upset and what she was putting herself through working 10 hours a day just to come home to her own hell. My mom's breaking point was when I found a strange white powder on my bookshelf and was playing with it one day when I was home alone. We tried to leave for the first time that night. My mom and I gathered the small things we could fit in her bags, stuffed it in the back of her truck, and drove to her sister's house. It took about 2 days for my father to find us, and the fallout was exponentially worse than what we could have imagined. No child wants to give up on a parent no matter how abusive they are. My father was crying on the doorstep to my aunt's house, pleading his case, and how he would give up drugs if we just came home with him. I believed him, and my mom and I returned home. Everything was exactly how it was left, except 2 of our dining room chairs were placed in the middle of the kitchen. As I entered our apartment, I heard him smash my mom's head against the entry wall to the left. She wasn't knocked out, but the sound it made was vile, like a bag of meat being thrown on the floor. As she collapsed from the pain, I remembered turning around confused. I felt a weird sense of anger I haven't felt since, where everything inside felt like it was on fire. I ran at my dad. The next part was like a movie. He threw a punch so fast I couldn't see it coming. I woke up tied to a chair, not being able to hear properly and not knowing where I was. My nose was plugged with something. I looked around the room and my father was by the stove boiling water. One hand was tied outstretched. I couldn't focus on anything and the light was piercing. The most intense pain I had ever felt to this day was having that water poured on my hand. I had never seen my mom cry before this. If it wasn't for the neighbors calling the police, I think my mom and I would have died right there. I was brought to the hospital and treated for second-degree burns covering 75% of my hand. Once the blister healed, there were 2 huge ones and 1 small one. The skin once they popped was weirdly smooth. A fractured orbital bone and a broken nose. My mom filed for divorce the next day, and my dad was charged with aggravated assault and was given orders not to contact anyone in our family until the trial had concluded. I thought everything was going to be okay. I did wish that things had played out differently, that I had a normal dad, but at least my mom and I were safe now. My mom and I found a new apartment and I spent most of my time in my room. After a month, my mom forced me to go out and ride my bike. After about 2 blocks, I saw it. That old Ford with a New York Rangers sticker on the bumper. My father loved the Rangers. I biked full speed into a large park directly in front of me. The exits were too small for a truck to fit in. I watched as my father circled the park in his car. If I crossed it, he would be waiting on me there. I went to the left and tried to double back to the path that ran beside the one I entered from, using the houses surrounding the park as cover. I didn't scream for help. I had no thoughts besides, "Run, run, run." He pulled up at the end of the exit and said something like, "I'm your father. I just want you to come home with me." Everything he said was slurred and almost incoherent. He got out, hugged me, and I hugged him back. As I was walking away to leave, his hand covered my mouth and his other hand grabbed me by the waist. He popped the trunk and stuffed me in. The darkness engulfed me. The only sounds were that of the radio set to the police station. I could hear them faintly over the casual sounds of the radio and the car's moving parts. I had seen in a TV show that cars have a trunk release from the inside. I couldn't find it if there was one in the pitch black. I tried calling around for anything to get out. My hand just ran over empty bags and papers with some plastic tubing. Nothing I could even try to defend myself with. I thought about what was going to happen to me. I wondered if he would kill me once the car stopped. I wondered if he was just driving away with me and going to try and start a new life with me so my mom could never see me. I thought about how my mom would react. I knew she would blame herself. I lost track of time, even though I'd later find out it hadn't been that long. After 20 minutes, my father lost control of the vehicle and crashed into an oncoming car on a semi-busy road. I was thrown around in the trunk. I broke 2 ribs from the impact, refractured my still unhealed orbital bone as well as dislocated my shoulder. My father was dead on impact. The trunk had been popped open in the crash. Feeling the fresh air mixed with the metallic taste of blood hit my mouth was the last thing I can still vividly remember. The ambulance was the first to arrive at the scene. They were afraid to move me as I could have been paralyzed easily from a crash like that. Apparently, I was murmuring incoherent gibberish. They pricked my feet with a pin, and when they moved, they loaded me onto the ambulance while police arrived on the scene. Once at the hospital, I had my clothes cut and replaced by a blanket. They placed me in another dark room, the only determinable feature being a TV turned on to Dora the Explorer. The nurse was trying to explain to me that I was being put to sleep so the doctors could help me. I screamed I wasn't going to sleep no matter what they did to me. I slowly drifted off, fighting the restraints less and less. I woke up being wheeled back and started screaming and crying as loud as I could. My mom and the rest of my family were there. I was confused, but they talked me down. I spent the rest of the week watching every episode of Pokemon I think they've ever made. I'm still not okay with what happened 100%, but I felt like maybe getting it out there might make me feel a little bit better. I got into drugs and alcohol for a bit to help with the pain, but I kicked it because I didn't want to end up like him. I just often think about what life would have been like if I had been born into a normal family with a normal father. This happened last year, around September. I was given a job at my campus's main dining hall. I was in charge of inventory. It was a 15-hour-a-week job that I had taken to get a little extra money. It wasn't hard at all. I just counted the amount of plates, cups, miscellaneous food items, etc. After that, I just chilled until my shift ended, which was usually around 10 p.m. It was my first day, or night actually, on the job. My supervisor was an asshole. He told me what to do, and then went home. He left me there to do the job by myself at around 7 p.m. It was already dark, but I did what he said. The place was creepy when it was empty. I finished in about 45 minutes. I sat around bored in the darkness. I played a few 100,000 games of Angry Birds. Still had an hour and a half left until my shift ended. Fuck. So I did what any good girl would do. I went into the kitchen. The kitchen was huge. It wrapped around half the building, it seemed. I went into the freezer area just to see what was there, and that's when I heard a bang from the front part of the kitchen. It scared me so bad that I slipped and fell. The floor was slick in the freezer. I crawled out on all fours to see what the sound was. When I looked, I didn't see anything but a silent figure darting back and forth in the darkness. I immediately flipped my shit, because the dark figure was bounding toward me. It grew larger and larger until I jumped up and turned on the lights. I was immediately staring into a pair of eyes. It was Roger, one of the cleaning staff members. My supervisor had mentioned cleaning staff came in later, but Roger was about 4 hours early. But I knew Roger. We were both juniors at the time, and I had a few classes with him. He was a sweetheart, but I think he wasn't all there. He just seemed off, but he always said hello to me, and I to him. But I remember asking him rather brashly, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And he just smiled, laughed, and shrugged. He didn't say words, and I was creeped the fuck out. Then he told me he had heard I got a job there, and he wanted to keep me company. I told him I was fine. He didn't leave right away, and I'm not the type of person to be incredibly mean and upfront, so I let him stay. Roger and I ended up talking about our classes and stuff. I realized that he just needed a friend, and I was happy to give him that. But the end of my shift came, and I told Roger I was leaving. I only had to go down to the basement level to turn off the heating/air unit, which is what people in charge of inventory did as part of the closing procedures. Roger said his goodbyes, then left. I went downstairs without thinking about it. Later, while I'm coming back from downstairs, I heard a door slam, heavy footsteps, and then Roger is standing at the top of the stairs. He told me there was a strange man outside and then he'd walk me to my car. I stopped, hesitated, then nodded. I trusted Roger. He was harmless. So I thought. I sent a text to my boyfriend and I told him I was on my way home. My phone, conveniently enough, died right after I sent the text. I gathered my things, but I couldn't find my wallet. I had left it on the front desk, but it wasn't there. I looked all around, retracing my steps, and spent an extra 30 through 45 minutes looking. Roger joined in on the help. He pretended like it was a game and was laughing about it the entire time. I was growing uncomfortable and agitated because I couldn't find my fucking wallet. As Roger bent down to look under a table, I saw the tip of my wallet poking out of the back of his pants. He had my wallet the entire time, but I felt uneasy about the whole thing. Why did he go along with this joke for so long? I called him out on it, beyond pissed off. I told him, rather abrasively, to give me my goddamn wallet back, and he held it out in front of me like I was a fucking dog. I thought to myself, you only have $5 and your student ID in there. You can get a new ID for about $10. Let the fucker have it. So I turned around, grabbed my keys, and hauled ass out the door. I turned around and was instantly barreled over by Roger. I hit the pavement outside the dining hall hard enough to daze me. He was laughing, and my vision was spinning. I pulled myself up. Roger was pushing me around, almost taunting me. I started wailing. I mean straight up Jamie Lee Curtis screaming. Roger shoved me hard enough to cause me to fall again, and I got up and ran across the parking lot. He was much larger than me, and much faster. He ran along beside me and just laughed. The fucker laughed. I didn't even run to my car. I ran out into the middle of the highway and screamed for everything I was worth. Roger was running up to me just as campus security sped and stopped right beside him. They asked what the problem was, but I was hyperventilating and having a panic attack. Roger just swore up and down he was trying to give me my wallet back, but I finally sobered up enough and screamed. He was chasing me, and he took my wallet and he wouldn't leave me alone. And blah blah blah, damsel in distress, tears, blah blah blah, all that mess. They took Roger in and my boyfriend came and saved the day for me. After they watched the security footage, Roger left campus after that. Never heard what happened, didn't care, and I vowed to never work another overnight job alone again. It was pretty fucking terrifying. To start this off, I'm a 16-year-old female. I was visiting my mom's apartment for the weekend with my sister. We go there every weekend or every other weekend to see her. We arrived at about 10 in the morning and brought in our pillows and movies from Grandma's car. We get inside and chill there for a couple of hours watching TV before my sister says she's hungry. My mom said, "Okay, what do you want?" "Pizza." I said I was okay with having pizza, and Mom said she would have to run to Kroger's, which is less than a mile away. She said she would also get some movies from the Red Box. My sister then asked if she could go with my mom to Kroger's. My mom said she could and asked if I would be okay in the apartment by myself. I said I would because I knew I would. "I'll be gone 20 minutes tops," my mom said. She didn't like leaving me alone, but she thought it would be okay, as she told me later. My mom's apartment is kind of in a crappy place, where sex trafficking people have been spotted, drug dealers and thieves and stuff. But I was on the 3rd floor of one of many surrounding apartment buildings, with tons of neighbors. I would be fine. "Okay, lock the door, and you know not to open unless it's me." They left soon after, and I was sitting on the couch on my phone with Jerry Springer playing in the background. It was about 10 minutes after they left when I heard the doorknob jiggle. I looked up, not feeling scared right away, but also feeling a bit wary. I should mention that I carry a pocket knife everywhere with me, and the blade is about 3 through 4 inches long. It was sitting on the coffee table in front of me when I got up to go to the door. I'm only 5'3" and I knew not to open the door, so I grabbed a chair and stood up on it to look through the peephole. That's when I shit my pants. On the other side was some Mexican guy, just standing there trying to open the door. Of course, being how I am, I tried to laugh myself out of being afraid because I had no reason to think he was going to do something to me. Maybe he just had the wrong room. I'd never seen him before, and I don't know everyone in the building personally, but I'd seen them all at least once, and he wasn't one of them. "Hey man, I think you got the wrong room." He froze, his eyes glued to the door handle, and then at the peephole. He probably could tell exactly where I was when I spoke. I swear we made eye contact, and the whites of his eyes were so yellow I thought he had jaundice. Then all of a sudden he started ramming his shoulder into the door, like full-on shoulder ramming like in football. I jumped off the chair and grabbed my phone and knife and ran into a room with a window and locked the door. I called my mom's friend who lives in the apartment building across the street and started crying hysterically and said, "Jess, someone's trying to break in. Call the cops. Bring Chris. Please just get over here." She didn't even hesitate. "Oh God, I'm coming." Within seconds of hanging up, I call my mom. The guy is still hitting the door and he's yelling in frustration now. My mom picks up after a few rings and I tell her what I told my friend, and that she was coming with Chris and she needed to get here quick. All she said was, "I'm coming." By the time I saw Jess make her way down 2 flights of stairs and across the road with her boyfriend, my mom was flying down the road and was there within mere seconds of me calling. They all raced inside and I heard everyone yelling in the hallway. I unlock the door and peek outside of the apartment to see Chris holding the guy against the wall, while my mom hugs me and Jess is screaming at him. Long story shorter, the police arrived and took my statement, and the man first denied it by saying, "I thought it was my room." But then he ended up confessing that he wanted to see me and talk to me because he thought I was pretty. The police officers had him in handcuffs and ran a background check on him, and what came back wasn't surprising. He had a warrant for an assault charge on a woman, and had been arrested for child molestation and kidnapping. Yeah, we didn't sleep that night. My high school held an annual Euro tour, and I went on my first one in 2011 when I was 16. There would be a bunch of teachers and parents that came along to supervise, including our headmaster, and almost everything was scheduled, but we did get a few hours every day to explore the cities ourselves. The tour was 12 days long. This would be my first experience on a plane, so my first experience overseas as well. My friend and I were casually walking down the streets of Rome, not far from our hotel, taking pictures and whatnot, wasting time before we had to meet our entire group, of around 15 kids and 4 teachers, for pizza at a small restaurant also very close to our hotel. This comes into play with what happened later at the restaurant. Fast forward. We are all at the restaurant now, all sitting on the side eating pizza and chatting. The teachers were sitting inside the restaurant near the door to keep an eye on what was happening outside. I decided to go next door and buy myself a bottle of water. I didn't think to take anyone with, as the tiny corner store was so close to the pizza place that a few kids were sitting near the entrance. After leaving the store,
So guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can let us know November patch still for the forgot, so that's kind of sad. And that two caps like if build now, go to the dev button as from recovery, allow and description and able to let's just I have it over here description. First of all, backup all backup over here as you can see, and if you go to the detail, it backup sorry in it desktop as you can see. The power off, hold your same time mode. Just after connecting it to your plug again and just hit the start.
Door. I got pushed up against a light post by a large man in a dark jacket. He towered over me, opened his jacket to cover me, and asked me my name.
היי חמודי.
אני לא יודע איך עושים את זה.
יא.
שלום רון. הלו דארקנס, מה לא פייס?
רום. יום ראשון רוצה מקדונלדס?
אומרים.
כזה מגיע לך לדעת עם ארוחות מקדונלדס. קסטום רום, אם זה הריקאברי זה היה יותר פשוט. אין לי בעיה להתקין את הקסטום ריקאברי. מה? חזק.
תשמעו, אתם לא מבינים, אני כל השבוע אני עובד כמו בולבול.
מסכן.
פעם ראית איך בולבול עובד?
רחמים. רחמים.
אני אסביר לך איך בולבול עובד.
תגנוב את האמו.
Why you do this?
Why you do this? I feel no... shotgun.
Why?
I feel no pain.
Loading.
Did he freeze?
מישהו יכול להסביר לי למה Call of Duty לא יוצא עדיין?
כן. ככה העולם עובד.
אני טוחן כל השבוע. אחי, הוא שם אותי, שתבין, יש בשבוע 7 ימים, שם אותי 7 ימים בשבוע. בגלל שאמרתי לו שאני לוקח כמעט שבוע חופש שהקוד יוצא.
אתה לוקח שבוע חופש.
מה זה שבוע חופש? אתה יודע, אמרתי לו, שמע, אני לא מתכוון לעבוד, כאילו, דבר ראשון, הוא יודע שאני לא... לא, הוא יודע שאני לא מתכוון לעבוד על היום שה-Call of Duty יוצא. כאילו, הוא יוצא ביום שישי בערב. אמרתי לו, מה זה? נכון. ואז אמרתי לו, תשמע, בוא נעשה ככה. אני אעבוד מוצאי שבת, יום ראשון אל תדבר איתי, שני אל תדבר איתי, שלישי נראה. ואז הוא עושה לי, בעד שאתה עובד כל החול המועד. אמרתי לו, יאללה.
אתה עובד כל חול המועד?
כן, אני עובד כל החול המועד עכשיו.
אוי, ג'יזוס. ינון! זה לא אתה. זה עוד אחד יורה עליי. ינון, כמה אנשים יורים פה? תרוג אותו.
הרגתי, אבל יש עוד אחד, שי.
רילי, ינון. הרגתי. הקיל הראשון שלי.
אני גם הרגתי.
Who cares about you? That's my first kill. ינון גומר.
רום, אתה אני מוצץ לך?
ינון!
בסדר, גם לך, גם לך.
רגע, מה? רגע אחד. That's not what I meant.
זה מה התכוונת?
איזוס. חיסוס קריסטל.
סתם, רום.
פתאום זה סתם, אה?
לא, צריך מתישהו, אבל...
אז אתה מציע ואז בורח, אה?
דוסי.
We're getting catfish.
להיפגש. באמת?
כן, אמרתי לך את זה.
יו, אבל... אם אני... וואי, יש מצב, אתה יודע?
תגיד לבוס שלך שאתה לא...
לא, כי אני עובד מוצאי שבת כאילו.
כן.
אתה מבין? אני עובד מוצאי שבת כאילו, שזה יוצא, כנראה. השאלה אם אני אספיק להגיע.
כן.
מה, בראשון, ואז מה? ואז אני רק אהיה ראשון שני. אולי, אני מאוד מקווה שהוא יסכים לי, אחי.
מה, הוא יהיה בלפטופ בעצם? כמו פעם שעברה?
כן. הלפטופ פצצה, אחי, מה?
מה זה הלפטופ?
באטל רויאל. כל היום, אחי.
אוי, אני ארביץ לו. נכון, של הקוד. נראה לך אני משחק מולטי טיפה.
לא, זה ברור.
לא, רום יביא לנו קיק מהבית שלו אם נשחק במולטי כשיש את הבאטל רויאל.
מה, הוא כיף רצח. שמע, אני יכול לבוא שישי זה, ואז אני אחזור מוצאי שבת, כאילו, אני אלך
רגע, מה?
עדיף, מה...
זה מה אני הולך לעשות? מי שעמם לי.
אחי, מה עדיף, שאני אשן בבית או אשחק בכל אוף דיוטי? נכון,
הוא לא יכול בשבת.
הוא שוכח את זה. אתה מבין, אז על הדקה מוצא שבת, כאילו, אני אסע ברכבת, ילך לעבודה, יחזור הביתה, וזהו.
הוא נוסע ברכבת לעבודה.
כן, זה 4 דקות, כאילו, מזה.
ביי.
הרכבת.
לא בא לך סנייפר?
לא. סורי, אני שונא סנייפרים.
משתיק לאייר. היי, אין לי מקום.
מישהו יכול להסביר לי, שי, בוא נלך להרים, אני צריך לטפס עליהם.
תתאבד. פרטי פופר!
אומר פחתי פופר. שי, לך תיקח, מה לך?
מן
מה
הסתם.
אמרת?
כי אין לך את כל הבלוטוור של סמסונג.
וואו!
ינון עזרה! מכין... אחד בנוק, תהרוג את השני! תהרוג אותו! יש לי הריגה! תחיה אותי! תן לי את זה, ינון!
יכול להפסיק לפרוץ אותם?
אני הורג אותם!
כאילו הם פרצו אותנו, אבל אתה פרצת אותם אחרי זה. זה לא עובד ככה.
פורצים את כולם!
לא, אחי, הוא באמת, הוא כאילו, ג'יזוס קרייסט, תפסיק לפרוץ אנשים.
יש לך בעיה עם ג'יזוס?
לא, אחי יקר בלב, אתה יודע?
למה אין לי מקום בבקפק? אין לי כלום בבקפק, כלום!
לא.
מישהו אמר שיש לי משהו? אז מה אתה רוצה? צריך את העובדות שלך.
עובדה?
אימא! ממא? יא, וונדבר. אל תיגע לי בדברים. הנה!
מה? לקחתי רק בנדג'.
שונא. איזה בנדג' לוקח לי מדקיט?
נו, אני אחזיר לך את זה אם אתה לא צריך.
הכל טוב, הכל
אתה
טוב.
צריך.
אם אתה לא צריך. I don't know. הדמות שלי קיבלה שבץ או מה? מה יש לי?
יכול
להיות. וואי, עכשיו אני מחכה ללן הזה יותר מדי.
גם אני.
בואי לי את זה. מתאים לי כזה. ואז הנה נשתה לי עוד פעם מהקולה. אתה לא זוכר.
רגע, זה שלך או שלי? לא, מה?
לא, השתמשת בו בשביל אנריל.
אתה בא להגיד לי מהלן לא נגעת בו?
נגעתי בו. כן.
אני חייב כל הדברים ל-M4.
הזיכרון שלך מידרדר ברמה רום.
טוב שי, בוא נעשה עוד כמה בתים ונלך להרים, טוב?
אוקיי.
צריך לטפס על ההרים.
רגע, מה? אתה בטוח שבא לך? That was a mistake. קסדה רמה 3? מה זה? אני נראה כמו פאקינג היטלר.
וואו, אימא'לה.
אחי, תסתכל, יש לי מסכת גזים.
כן, כן.
כן, כן, הוא רץ פשוט קדימה, כן, כן.
לא, ראיתי.
מה הולך עם זה? איזה משחק באטל רויאל מוזר.
איזה כיף, שי.
תחבושות.
הגז צריך לעוף מפה.
בדיוק. זה מעפן. אני לא יודע לאן אני רץ, ינון. אתה אשם.
אני עושה...
רגע, קר לנו, ינון.
מה? לא. כי הגז עדיין לא הגיע. נכון, אבל הגז עדיין לא הגיע אלינו. אז
בוא נרוץ לאזור שלא קר בו.
בסדר, אבל יש לך זמן.
ינון, על מי אתה יורה?
יורים בי, שי!
אז תירה בהם חזרה. איזה גרוע זה, אחי, איך אני מכוון פה? למה זה החליף לי לאקדח?
הרגתי?
את שניהם כאילו? או שהיה רק אחד?
לא, את שניהם חיובי. חשבתי שזה שתי טימים, בגלל זה אחי.
גיביו. תודה על הלוט.
No problem.
אין לי מקום ללוט.
GG.
יש לי מקום ללוט.
לא. תחליט.
למה יש לי 47 תחבושות? ינון. איך אני זורק תחבושות? כאילו כמות מסוימת. אני לא יכול לקרוא כמות
רגיל,
שאני רוצה.
אתה לוחץ על אלט וגורר את זה. על אלט?
אלט?
אלט על זה, נו.
איך אני זורק כמות מסוימת?
פשוט גורר את זה הצידה.
עם קונטרול, אוקיי. אלט.
למה אמרתי אלט? למה אמרתי אלט?
אמרת אלט. אמרת,
אני לא
אמר
יודע.
גם שיפט? לא אמר שיפט.
אני לא יודע למה אמרתי אלט. טוב, זהו.
אז זהו. היטלר!
לא, עדיין לא היטלר. הנה, אתה תלחץ M רגע. אתה רואה את כל הכחול?
אני רואה את האזור. כן, אנחנו באזור הכחול, צריך לאזור הלבן.
יש לנו פה אוטו, יופי.
האפור.
למרות שזה אוטו קקי, אבל בסדר.
גרנטה! סתם זרקתי רימון.
אני יודע. שמע, זה אוטו ממש קשה לנסוע בו, כי זה אוטו לכביש נגיד, יש פה אוטו, אתה יודע.
אני מבין. למה ה-FPS אבל כזה נמוך? 50 FPS במשחק כזה גרוע, מה? מה, אני בוכה. כאילו, ה-CPU ה-GPU ב-50%, ה-CPU ב-60%. כזה, what?
נו, ג'יסס, אחי, אני לא מספיק להגיע בזמן.
אופטימיזציה? מה, זה איירדרופ?
כן.
כדור בוער זה איירדרופ.
כן. רק תכנס אחרי זה לרכב?
מה זה רכב?
הרכב שלנו.
רגע, זה סנייפר מה שהרמתי הרגע?
כן, כן.
אבל אין לי סקופ, איך אני אמור לכוון עם זה?
כנראה מישהו לקח את הסקופ שלו. אתה רוצה להיכנס? יש לנו דקה?
לא.
יש לנו דקה, אבל.
לא אכפת לי, אני לא רוצה להיכנס לאוטו. אתה לא תגיד לי. הנה, לקחת לי את הכוונת ישמן?
לא, יש לי כפול 4, אבל אם אתה רוצה.
עוזר לי.
מה זה?
עוזר. יש לי 2x, אז נעביר לך במקום 4.
לא!
מה אתה עושה? ינון, מה אתה עושה?
תתפלל שזה יעבוד.
אוי, לא. רום.
מה?
אנחנו מתים, רום. רום! ינון, מה אתה עושה?
אני לא נראה לי...
קר לי, ינון! I'm cold. אוי, לא, רום, למה? Why you do this to me? Why are you נגד?
יש לנו דקה, שי.
רום, פיזיקה לא קיימת במשחק הזה. אנחנו מטפסים על ההר 90 מעלות. עם רכב, כאילו.
וואי, עוד מעט 26 חברים.
מיסטר סטארק. כאילו במיסטר סטארק אתה צריך למצוא איזה משהו אחר למיסטר סטארק.
שי, יש לי הרגשה שאם אנחנו נופלים עם הרכב, אנחנו מתפחצים, לא. לא.
אז למה אני נוסע איתך?
כי אתה באתי ישר והתחלתי משחק, אני לא יכול עכשיו אז. אבל ג'יזוס קרייס.
שלום. כי חם פה. אין מה לעשות, זה הקיץ. זה הקיץ. זה הקיץ. צריך להנמיך את הווליום עוד יותר, שימו של המשחק הזה. ינון, מה אתה עושה?
אני מנסה לרדת למטה, אבל התנגשתי בסלע.
באמת? כן, זה בסדר. לא צריך, הכל טוב. הדמות שלנו כאילו... מה קורה לדמות שלנו?
היא קופה למוות בעיקרון, כן.
אני לא הייתי קופה שמה.
נכון, היית כבר מת.
לא, חם לנו פה. אני שם תחבושות.
אתה יכול?
דבר.
אה?
כן. כבר!
שם. אני לא יכול לשים.
ינון ישמן, זוז! תגיע לסייף זון. מזלי, יש לי איזה 20
אני עומד למות, שי.
אז תגיע לסייף זון! לא!
שי, תהרוג אותם!
איך, אמא? הרגתי אחד.
שי!
ואני מת. ינון מאחוריי! ירית עליי אוטיסט?
לא, אני מת. היה לי 1 HP, לא ראית שנכנסנו לזון? היה לי אשכר 1 HP.
כן, ראיתי את זה. Cancer, this game is cancer.
לא, זה היה חמוד, שי.
מה?
לא?
המשחק הזה הקריס לי את הפאקינג אוברליי של
לא.
NVIDIA.
תקשיב, אני
אוקיי?
צריך ללכת 10 דקות ואני חוזר, טוב?
גו.
צ'או.
למה שתינוק ירצה לאכול אותו? עכשיו, uninstall game, delete, ניצחתי. אז, יש עוד משחקי VR מעניינים? יאללה, מוריד כל משחק VR שאני רואה בסטים ומוחק אותם אחד אחרי השני. that's fun, yeah. delete. יאללה, הנה יש לי רלם רויאל עדיין על המחשב, למחוק. כמה משחקי VR, כמה? עד מתי Call of Duty, עד מתי? הולכים למקדונלדס כשינון בא. ג'יזוס. פעם קודמת לא היה לאנץ' של משחק שעשינו אותה, נכון? לא. למה עשינו את זה? כן. World War 2, כן. כן. יופ. פוטו פאבג'י. Spider-Man. Spider-Man. כשאני בא אליך נגיד ראשון או משהו כזה, אני אביא איתי גם דיסק און קי עם הסטוקרום, ככה. אני אביא גם סטוקרום ככה שאם יהיה לנו איזה בעיה נוכל לחזור אליו. אין בעיה, אני אביא אותו. זה לא קבל, אתה יודע, זה... רציני OTG. אשכרה לא יכולת להעביר את זה דרך הכבל? כאילו, זה לא... וואו. OTG עבד אמרת. כאילו, ADB הבנתי. איזה מוזר זה? כן, אז אני אביא אז את הדיסק און קי, את הסטוק רום ואת ה-OTG. כמה זמן לא אכלתי מקדונלדס כשאני חושב על זה? אתה כנראה אוכל מקדונלדס כל יום שני. הם שינו משהו מעניין או שאין אותו דבר הכל? מעצבנים. צריך שינוי. מקדונלדס. בוא נראה אם יש מעניין בתפריט שלהם. למה אני במקדונלדס ארצות הברית? ישראל. חדש, משלוחים בראשון לציון. תהיה באור עקיבא. תגעגע לפיצה? וואי, לא הלכנו באמת לזה. הם הוסיפו מגה ביג אמריקה ריב. לא, זה הרגיל. רגע, מה? מה כן? למה זה נקרא עכשיו ריב? לא כיף איתך. זורם. פול פול. פול פול. היי מקדונלדס. אז אשכרה הצלחת להתקין על הסמסונג ליניאג'. יופי. ניסינו רימיקס. ניסינו רימיקס. אני זוכר גם. איתך. זה בטוח שכן. היה לי קובץ על המחשב והשתמשנו. ניסינו כמה גרסאות. ניסינו הרבה דברים. לא יודע, פשוט זה לא רוצה לעבוד. זה מוזר. הם גם מוציאים, כאילו, זה גם הם הוציאו כמה בילדים מאז שניסינו. כן, אז ננסה, כאילו, הנה, הבילד שאנחנו ניסינו היה 828 בסוף, שזה ב-28/8. יצאו כבר 3 בילדים מאז. כן. אני אוריד גם עכשיו את הפאבג'י. פרמטתי. כן. לא, הקטע זה התקנתי וגאס וזה, לא יודע, זה היה דפוק. כן, זה היה דפוק, קיצור. אמרתי, אוקיי, פאק יו וגאס, לא נלך להכין תוכנות יותר כאלה. כן. זה הגיע למצב שאני פשוט מפרמט באיזה 2 בבוקר. What time it is? It's formatting time! Woo! כן, חוזרים כזה לרום הכי טוב שיהיה. אשכרה הם לא הוציאו זה, 15 ל-S7 Edge, יש לך אמרת? כן. אבל זה official build, נכון? לא יודע. ב-S7 וב-S7 Edge וכל זה, יש Always on Display, כאילו, בסמסונג רום? ובליניאג' הוא עובד או שלא? אוקיי. זה עובד, אבל אני לא בליניאג'. כן. כן. הבנתי אותך. מה? ב-Always on Display? מה, בגלל ברנין כאילו, שלא עובד? לא יודע, לסמסונג ה-Always on Display שלהם, כאילו, הוא לא סטטי, הוא זז. כן. כן, כבר יש לו ברנין? אחרי זמן מסוים הברנין מגיע וזה לא כיף לראות את זה. דודה שלי משתמשת בנוט 4 שחברה שלה הביאה לה. הברנין זה פשוט מקלדת אמוג'ים. אני לא צוחק, זה כזה מקלדת אמוג'ים וכל הטופ בר בברנין. זה הזוי. כאילו... אבל יש לך רק בווייז, אה? טוב, זה הגיוני. אז זה לא מפריע לך. אתה לא משתמש בו כפריימרי? למה החלפת בסוף ל-A8? אה. מה אמרת כזה? רגע, בעצם אין לו אדג'. רגע, איזה... כן, מבחינת ספקס. כן, בספקס כן. כנראה הוא אוהב את איך שהוא נראה. לא. כן, המצלמה... וואי, האפליקציה של המצלמה גם של סמסונג די טובה. זה טיפה... יהיה מבאס. אתה אוהב? האיכות של התמונות והפוסט פרוסס. גם לא, כאילו הפוסט פרוססינג גם די טוב. מה שהם שמים בפילטרים. למשל התמונות ששלחתי של ההמבורגרים וכל זה שם, זה כאילו עם הפריסט של הפוד שם. דווקא די טוב. תוסיף טיפה סטוריישן וכאלה. ועושה פוקוס כזה. You like it raw, huh? לא נראה לי שזה יעבוד. איפה אתה יכול למצוא גם APK של מצלמה שלהם? מה? APK של המצלמה שלהם? וזה יעבוד? כן רגע תגיד לי אם זה עובד. וכל הפילטרים אמורים לעבוד? זה מה שמעניין. יש כאן את ה-Edge Screen, Game Tools, Adapter. יש גם את ה-Edge Touch. יופ. Bixby. לא. זה לא תומך ב-7.1? כל הגרסאות פה שאני רואה זה בשביל 8 פלוס. בואו נראה שימו. וואי, יש המון גרסאות. איזה גרסה זה? זה 7.5? או 7? כן. אופס. לא עובד? מה זה אומר? אוקיי. כן. אוקיי. כן. אני יודע. אין הלינאג'. וזה לא שייסה שאתה רואה ממש. יש הרבה שייסה בבקגראונד. כן, זה מעצבן. זה פיקסל? לא, אבל כאילו, איזה גרסה זה? זה תמיד היה ככה? לא. רציני? לא. כן. אבל עם סמסונג, לא? כן. זה לא ישנה לי יותר מדי, כי אני לא רוצה להיות ברום של סמסונג, כי אין לי טעם להיות ברום הזה יותר מדי. כי טוב, לא כל האפליקציות, אבל הרבה מהאפליקציות שלהם במילא לא עובדות אצלי יותר. זה תלוי. אם בפאי הם יביאו לי לעשות קאסט ושטויות כאלה, או ישנו כמה פיצ'רים מפגרים שאני לא יכול לעשות ובסטוק אנדרואיד אני יכול, אני אולי אשתמש בזה. בינתיים, lineage it is. מה שבא לך. אנחנו בלופ-הול. What do we want to do? Oh god, no. Hitler? Oh god. What have I done? מה? אוקיי. מה ההבדל? גם לא. פאבג'י עוד לא ירד. 14 ג'יגה. בוא לך פאבג'י אז זה... כיפה. אוקיי. ינון מת, נכון? ינון מת, לא? 10. נין? You got the formula. What is the formula? Kill the juice. נני? Dude. Fine!
Could be like brothers.
Nope! I have joined, level 1 dude. Party. אתה רואה את הריקוד שלך. אני שומע את הקו שלך.
Need cover, build some.
Use the map to see where you are and where what?
Boom hatchet, boom hatchet, boom hatchet. Headshot.
Shot?
Headshot.
Boom, 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 boom.
אתה יכול לשים את הסטרים שלי במסך למעלה. אתה רוצה לראות איך אני מתקדם במסריח?
Okay. Where is it? Where is
Give
it?
it to me, baby.
Nope, nope. זה לא הולכים.
סימנתי.
אתה בקריפי פסטה בזמן שאתה מה? מה זה מה יש בסטרים שלך?
הוא לא עושה קפצ'ר לפורטנט?
אני רואה, הנה אני רואה. דו.
Mary Poppins, y'all.
לא יודע, לא ראיתי. יש לו.
That's cool.
That is cool, yeah. יש לי מיניז להביא לך.
קר לג'נדרי, לא, קר אפיק.
Very nice.
I'm sorry, I lied to you, baby.
דלת עם שבץ, די!
Baby. Don't hurt me, don't hurt me no more.
הדלת הזאת עם השבץ כזאת מעצבנת.
יש לי קטנה לתת לך.
יש לי כבר 4 ספייר. You can keep your shield to yourself, bitch!
Motherfucker!
Motherfucker! That man single-handedly ruined motherfucker to me.
Oh, fans.
That motherfucker. Ryan! What? Hi.
Hey, catch!
Catch! הסתובב אחורה! אאו. תסתכל למעלה.
ראיתי את זה בזרקת!
פיצצת את התיבה שלי!
רוצה... הנדיג רייפל?
רוצה תיבה!
דופטה בפרי, ביץ'.
You just blew up my fucking chest!
All over your chest.
Motherfucker! What? What the heck? What? No one wants to follow you! Oh, chest. Ooh. Ooh, yes!
Yes.
Oh god, no! No, no, no! אופס. רוצה להחזיק מדס כלשהם? יש לי 2 מדקיטס, בנדג'ז, מיניז.
תביא את המיניז, יש לי אחד.
סבבה. 2. Nanny! Don't you close the door on me? אמרת הנטינג רייפל היה למעלה כאילו?
בסדר, הוא עליי.
תשתמש בו. אני אמצא גם אחד. לא, למה אתה מחזיק אותו אם אתה לא רוצה אותו?
שואל אותו אם אתה רוצה אותו.
Hey sweetie! Wanna go grocery shopping? Why not?
יש לך שלי גדולה לך?
לא.
קח.
אני אשתה אותו. ניום ניום. Oh! I'm smart. זרקתי כאן SMG אם בא לך. כחול. טבזון ממש פה, אז אפשר להמשיך כאילו...
נעוף!
בסדר, אמא, עזבי אותי!
בוא תעלה.
אמא, איפה החלב? בא.
לא, צ'סט שם למעלה.
יש פה צ'סט בצומה. בודק מה יש בצ'סט הזאתי ואני באה.
קח את הסנאפר אם אתה רוצה.
סבבה. סקאר! ייי!
עם השליק או בלי?
בלי.
אומייגאד.
קרס לך?
יפ, אוקיי, זה לא הדרייבר אז. אז למה רק פורטנייט קורס לי?
נראה לי זה בגלל הסטרים. משהו בסטרים גורם לזה.
רק לפורטנייט?
כי זה קורה לך רק בזמן שאתה בסטרים, שמת
אבל
לב?
אני בסטרים גם משחק פאבג'י, גם משחק מיינקראפט, גם הכל.
כן, אני הבנתי את זה. היי רום! אני רואה אותך כזה הולך במקום עם סקאר מושתק. אתה מוכן למות יותר מהר! איפה היה הסנייפר?
צ'סט שהלכתי ממנה.
לוט! אין למה זה קורס לך אבל.
כן, זה גם לא המבט, כי עדיין לא החזרתי לו בכלל 5 ג'יגרץ.
זה הרצח. מעניין אותי איך זה שיש רק 20 איש חיים והסייף זון עוד לא נסגר, ראשון אפילו. זה כולם נחתו באותו מקום ומתו בשנייה אחת? האם ישמור? הלו? anybody? אף אחד לא רוצה להרוג אותי? אני יוצא. יוצא עכשיו יורים בי. הנה. היי.
פאבג'י לא קרסתי, נכון? פאבג'י ששיחקנו אתמול, קרסתי?
לא נראה לי.
נכון? רק פורטנייט.
כן. טוב. יאללה, לקפוץ עכשיו מגובה אלוהים יודע מאיפה, כי הרגתי בן אדם שאמור להיות שחקן טוב, אבל הוא בוט. Hitler, catch me! Ow! Okay. טוב, קפצתי. rear. תשמור את הדמו הזה רק כי אני יודע שבני דודים שלי אוטיסטים אוהבים את האחר הזה. פירם. join על רום. זה רעיון טוב לעשות join על רום. רגע, לעשות join על רום. Eh? Why did it stop? Oops. Update Bixby. That's exactly what I want to do. Hey, Bixby!
You suck on my penis.
אני הולך להגיד לביגסבי לעשות עדכון לעצמו. Update yourself. I don't care what you found on the web, you fucking bitch. I like me some marshmallows. Some penis. What? טיפה. אני חושב שאינון באמת מת. מה שקרה? All around me are familiar faces. Oh. נפלת!
ברחתי, מה אתה רוצה שאני ימות?
אני רץ אליך. אני זורק רימוני גז עליהם, ככה ש... אני הורג את כולם עם הגז! עשיתי מה? אני יודע.
הנה על הגז.
כן, יש אחד פה גם. שוטגן עליי. הרגתי את השוטגן. רגע, לא, כרגע. Fuck it. I'm doing it. Uh-oh.
הוא פספס גם עם זה.
עוד! רן, לולה, רן! או! הוא 1 HP. הוא בנוק. טימים שלו פה עליי. מתים. אני לא יודע. כן. רוצה רילוד?
יורבי.
איפה?
נראה לי למעלה?
לא יודע.
למעלה, על המדרגות.
יפ. הוא לא, הוא רצח. היטלר לא!
עליי.
לא היה לי HP. עשיתי נוק לכל כך הרבה אנשים, הורדתי. אחי, הרגתי 2 עם גז.
אם הם לא ירגיב אחד את השני, נראה לי היית הורג זה 4 שם.
הרגתי 4, כאילו סיימתי 4 בסך הכל.
לא, עם הגז, כי 2 הרגו שם 2 ואז הרגת את ה2 שנשארו חיים.
כן. זה הזוי אחי. מה אתה רוקד? מה? בוא! אתה חייב להשיג לואודינג סקרין.
לא, אני אוהב את הלואודינג סקרין הזה עם 3 בולבולים האלה. זה כיף. הבנת? זה כיף!
I understand you really enjoy your loading screen, sir.
Sir, don't argue.
Sir.
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 No, sir, come on, sir.
حرام 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 איפה חלב?
Because in this moment, he knew he made some bad life decisions. Turned into a man. Never spoke to try again. Ever again. That was his life story. Ended in 14 deaths, 13 rapes, and 1 committed suicide. Learn his
Wait,
life
what?
story. No,
Isn't that
Discovery
Hitler's-
Channel.
What the fuck? אני רואה אותך פשוט מסתכל עליי כזה, נופ! Marshmallows? Marshmallows. I like marshmallows.
I like penis. I like turtles.
I like penis Parker.
Penis Parker. You say penis, you say Parker. Oh, עכשיו זה יותר עצוב שהוא מתברר לפארק כי הוא פינס. זה עצוב שפינס נעלם.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What the shit?
That's his name is shit.
I've got a chest. ויש לי RPG. אתה הרמת נשק?
צריך שתי פינס.
למה המשחק מביא לי רק נשקים שהם פיצוץ?
הוא חושב שאתה ניגר. רוצה בולט אקשן? סנייפר?
למה לא? I say penis, you say Parker. Penis! Well, just penis. יש עוד אנשים קרובים נראה לי.
חצנח איתנו.
שיהיה בטוח ששמעתי משהו, שזה היית אתה. אמור להיות תיבה פה? שפתחת אותה.
הכי למעלה פתחתי.
הסנייפר אצלך?
לא, אז עכשיו זה הרבה טוב. פה. איפה שאני עכשיו, אתה רואה?
תודה רבה. או, תיבה. צ'ק ג'ק! בוא שתי צ'ק ג'ק, שיהיה לך... זה.
לא שווה? זה צ'אק ג'אג.
אחי, צ'ק ג'ק אתה לא הולך להשתמש בו בזמן קרב. צ'ק ג'ק לוקח איזה חצי שעה
אני
להשתמש
יכול
בו.
כלום.
אתה תשתמש בו באמצע קרב?
כן, אם אני כלום.
אז בוא קח אותו, אני לא מרים את זה, אני בקור.
בני.
אז למה לא לשתות את זה אם זה יישאר פה במילא?
שלום.
ברע שאני משחק יותר. מצאתי.
מה, מצאתם משחק יותר טוב?
ככה מאוד.
מה מצאתם? אתם לא משחקים.
פורטנייט.
49.
אני מביא לך את הצ'ק ג'ק. זה העיף אותך 5. טוב, איזה 100 מטר. זרקתי פה את הצ'ק ג'ק.
מה אתם משחקים?
פורטנייט!
פורטנייט.
אוי ואבוי.
בואי ז'מואה.
זה פאק
משה. פאק. Hey, fuck for me, big boy.
אני בתור מוצא AR יותר טוב מקומון, אני אשמח.
יותר טוב ממה?
מקומון. כל דבר. חוץ מקומון.
אוקיי. אמור להיות זה, AK ירוק.
אני לא
איפה
רוצה
שהם.
AR. ידעו, רוצה פאבג'י?
אפשרי.
נעשה את המשחק הזה ונבוא.
יש כאן ביג שילד. יש לך מקום?
למה ביקשתי לך קדנים עם תמוס? רגע, איך נהיה פה 100?
שתית את הצ'ק ג'אג.
חשבתי שזה בית לי סלארפ!
יש לך צ'ק ג'אג. אמרתי צ'ק ג'אג.
השתמשתי סתם בצ'אק ג'אג, מה אתה רציני?
אמרתי צ'ק ג'אג, אחי, מה? אני לא אמרתי סלרפ! תראה את הסטרים שלך!
בזבזתי צ'אק צ'אק!
תראה את הסטרים שלך, אחי! קח RPG. לא בא לך את ה-RPG?
אין לי מקום.
תחזיר את האמו שלו, אני אקח אותו.
פאק יו, מיין.
What?
מיין.
You're not even using it!
לך תדע, אולי יזרוק אותו עם היד.
אני...
אפילו יותר ממה ש...
מיין! וואי! היי! wait a minute! מה זה? יש כאן תיבה, עצור! עצור! אבא!
פאפה!
פאפה, שתה!
אבא מוציא את ה-RPG. I'm not taking any shit from you anymore, daddy.
Stop the car, bitch!
This is the nigga police! We detected that nigga!
אוי, יש שם ביג שילד.
אני חושב שאפשר לרדת בשתיים.
לא, כולם הם שינו את זה. כן, שינו.
שינו, אנחנו לא זכרנו נכון, מה הם שינו?
רגע, יש לך מדקיט עליך?
כן.
תביא, אני אחזיק אותה.
תזדיין.
יש לי 2, אחי, אני יכול
שאמרת,
להחזיק
אני
אותה.
נתקעתי בלי ומטתי, לך תזדיין.
אז קח תשמורת שלי גם.
לך תזדיין.
מה?
פשוט לך
תחליט.
תזדיין.
אוקיי, למה לא? אבל כאילו... סע, אני אבנה, סע.
סע, אל תדאג, סע.
סע כבר!
Don't worry, trust me, I'm a professional.
אני יכלתי לבנות לערוך את זה כדי שניפול בכוונה. אוי, יכלתי להיות כזה דוש.
יכלתי פשוט לבנות.
אבל לא היית נוסע.
Thank you, Mr. Off, yes.
That's a tree!
אבל זה אלים!
That's a tree!
תוציא את ה-RPG.
That's a tree!
Fuck the environment!
עוד ביג שיט.
חיים לא סתם לך לבגידה הזאת. מה אתה עושה? לא! What are you doing, bruh?
אנשים היו פה כנראה.
Really? What gift it
לא מכיר.
away?
מישהו פה עלינו! עלינו! really? הוא בנוק? הלו, מאדר האקר. תביא לי ביג שילד.
סטופ!
ראיתי
לא
אותו.
אותי!
פגעתי בו כדור, 2. לא, אמרתי לך, אני לא רוצה. לא, אני לא רעב, תודה. לקחת את המדקיט. לא, אני לא רוצה, טלי.
כאילו?
או גאד. אני יורה, הוא בנוק.
זה לא...
מה? זה מישהו אחר. אל תדאג. הוא מכוון עלינו. פאק. אני צריך לבנות משהו יותר נורמלי. יורה עליך, בן זונה. אני אעשה. זה לא עוזר.
עזוב, תירה בו, עזוב אותי, תירה בו.
רגע, אני צריך לעשות רילוד. הורדתי לו 105 מגן.
תחיה.
כן. זה בן זונה, הורדתי.
תפסיק.
I made it.
אתה לא בונה מספיק מהר.
הרגתי אותם.
רק תדם.
אותו. איפה הטימית שלו? שעשיתי לו נוק.
זה
היינו.
הראשון שהרגת.
כן, הנה. לא, עכשיו הוא מת השני. המדקיט שלי... עוד אחד.
פה.
אוקיי.
אני חייב להחזיק את המעבר כי אני מגיע מהתחת. צריך להתמודד עם הרעש פשוט.
מזגן.
אני רואה בן אדם. פגעתי.
אני שנייה, בא.
או מישהו קופץ עליי.
אני בא.
אני למעלה, אל תדאג, אני בסדר. זה שכאילו כיוון פגעתי בו עם סנייפר. הוא אמור להיות בבוטים, איבדתי את הכיוון, קוסומו. יש שם סקאר, אני הולך להביא אותו. אני חושב שם... אוקיי, מצאתי את הכיוון שלי.
אתה בטוח? סגור על עצמך?
לא 100%. בוא לכיוון הסייבזון טיפה.
דקה. אוקיי. תעצבן.
לא מאמין שאני חי. או שאתה חי יותר נכון.
כן.
המדקיט אצלך, נכון?
לא, למטה.
פאק. יש לי כאן, מרים אותם? אם יש לך מקום?
פה.
יש כאן M16 כחול.
זה בוא. זה שלך.
יש לי מיניס להביא לך. קח מיניס. קח אותם ושמור אותם אם אתה יכול. יש לך ביג שיט גם אחד, לא?
כן. יש לך מקום למיניס?
לא, אם אני עם המדקיט אין לי מקום.
תמיד המד...
כן, קח את המדקיט. קח. מה אתה אומר? לא, זה יהיה בזבוז עכשיו. אופס, רגע. סליחה. עלינו? לא.
כן.
מת. יש סיכוי אתה מביא לי ביג שילד?
כן, תביא לי מיניס? let's trade.
קח. איפה המדקיט? קחתי. אצלך?
ביי!
איפה הוא?
מולנו איפשהו.
כן, ראיתי, שנייה אני יורד אותו.
קפץ עליי.
Oh God.
שאתה מחיה אותי, תסביר לי. רגע.
אנחנו על גבול הזון, אז תהיה מוכן לזוז טיפה קדימה. יש לך מדקיט, שים לך מדקיט, אני אביא לך מיניס.
אני חושב שזה לא יעצר עלינו. תרוץ מולי, אוקיי.
נס. צור, אני אבנה לנו קאבר.
אני אבנה מאחורי את זה.
זה משנה. העץ הזה כאילו לא מביא לך ממש קאבר. אם כבר הוא חוסם אותך, הנה.
כמה פעם אתה הרגת אנשים בזמן שאני איבד דאון במשחק הזה?
לא מעט.
יש לך מיניס?
כן.
again?
אני חוזר טיפה ללוט. ג'יזוס, אחי. כמה גן פייטס יש פה? כמה אינגייג'מנטס מפגרים היו פה? יש לי לאונצ'פד אם נרצה להתחפף מפה או, זה טוב שיש לי את זה. להתחפף מפה עכשיו נעוף. יש לך AR כחול? אוקיי. טוב, בוא נעוף מפה. לא מה שרציתי לבנות. טוב. טוב, ללכת, אוקיי, עוד גובה.
אני תקוע בעץ.
אני בוט. אני פשוט גרוע בבנייה, זה מעצבן אותי, אחי. יאללה בוא. כאן לוט, כנראה זה מי שהבן אדם שהרגתי. כאן משהו מעניין? לא. עוד דברים. לא. יש לך באונסרים, משהו מולכדות?
יש לי מלכוד. יש מולנו אנשים למעלה בגבעה.
אוקיי, אני רואה. יורים עליהם נראה לי.
בוא נלך להכיר את עצמנו. Let's introduce us.
Let's introduce us to the enemies. יש לי את ה...
יש לי פיו פיו קטן ומהיר.
יש לי את הספיידרמן. אני פשוט יכול לקפץ ולהביא להם שוטגן לפה. ספיידרמן, ספיידרמן. למה זה מראה כאילו אין לי 100 ארמור, אבל יש לי 100 ארמור.
משחק שבור, literally unplayable.
אתה רואה את זה? כן. זה מוזר זה? כמה אנשים יש? עוד 11. תזהר כי אתה התקדמת לפני. אחד נפל. אני אחד HP, אני אחד... לא! למה הוא מבסס עם P90 כמו ארמור? טוב רום! לא! הוא יסיים אותי עכשיו! למה סיימת אותו? למה?
אני לא יודע איך לעלות.
אבל אם לא היית מסיים אותו, לא היה מסיים אותי! אמור להיות לא זה ש...
אני צריך
בעצם...
לבנות מדרגות כדי שנוכל לעזור לך.
ברור! אתה יודע, הוא למעלה, כן. מה עליך? רואים עליכם מקום אחר, נראה לי. עליו. Say hello to my little friend, Gringo! תבנה קיר!
אני לא יודע לבנות קיר.
F1! Nice try. Rip.
Good game, well played. Don't be mad, it's only game.
PUBG?
PUBG. אפשר לעשות עוד קליק נורמלי?
ינון. היי.
ביי.
Who invited you?
אתה בפאבג'י אינן? אתה בבאבגי?
בובגי?
בבגי?
בובגי?
בובג'י?
בובג'י.
Hello, Axel. Like a penis.
Do you wanna play Maple Story too?
Yes. Without a doubt. Do you want to play with my
יש לי
balls?
תמונה פאבג'י.
Wanna play with my balls?
Yes.
You can finish each other balls.
What?
What? The flying Hitler.
הווים בווה.
Awim bawa.
מסדר הגדרות. היום. Hello, my friend. I am the winner, and I have the chicken dinner. Do you have an issue with me, my friend?
Yes, a lot of.
Why do you have an issue with me, my friend?
You're an asshole.
I'm not an asshole, my friend.
I'm not your friend, my dude.
I'm not your friend, you're my dude.
Bruh, come on, bruh.
Nah, bruh.
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 Hey, bruh.
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 Suck a penis, bruh.
Bruh. Don't tell me what to do, bruh. I will suck whatever
Okay.
I want to suck.
Show me your penis.
Okay!
I'll show you my move and tuchen.
My מוכן.
Quantum's mochen tuchen. Wird der Bruder hier Rosie.
No. The bush is the biggest.
Oh god. Obbe, busse, delicious, machen tachen. You never know who you meet.
You are going to suck my penis.
That's a fact.
Potato Devil is joined. Potato Devil has declined your invitation.
Okay.
Very good PUBG.
Inan?
מה?
Inan?
Mm.
Redley?
Mm.
Obbe, some busse, delicious, machen tachen.
You never know who you fuck.
אתה שם טיפי פינה.
Yes, you do.
זה-
מה, אתה לא עשית רדי, ינון.
עשיתי.
לא עשית.
מה? וכאן אני עושה רפרש.
מה רפרש? תעשה רדי!
אצלי זה ברדי
אז
האוטיסט.
תעשה עוד פעם
שנייה.
רדי.
נכון.
תעשה עוד פעם.
אומייגאד, שנייה.
אאו.
הנה.
מאי.
מה?
למה?
כן.
שי, רום, למה עשית סקוואד?
איך אתה רוצה
מה
עוד?
למה עשית סקוואט?
3.
ינון,
אין 3!
מה 3?
מה?
יש עוד דואו או
לא,
סקוואד.
לא, אבל עשית שזה יעשה פיל לעוד בן אדם.
אז זה תגיד, אני לא יודע, נרצח אותו, מה זה משנה? תצאו, אני לא רוצה למפה הזאת בכל מקרה.
מירמר!
תפוחים.
מה פשוט תפוחים?
You never know you meet.
סקוואד, ואז מה אני
אמור
עושה?
לי
פריימן סקוואד, סבבה.
זה אמור להיכנס לי קודם, לפני שזה יצא לי.
סבביש.
קובה, עושה, delicious, machen tachen. You never know.
נו.
מה קרה?
אין לי די, ינון. אין לי די.
המשחק לואודינג.
גם אתה לא ברדי. עכשיו אתה ברדי.
כי שנהייתי, עשיתי לשחק באטל, אבל עשיתי פרסט פרסון סטרימן סקוואד.
ינון!
רגע.
אסהול.
זה כרטיס מסך.
כן, זה כרטיס
או מי
מסך על הלואודינג עושה.
כן.
בדיוק!
לנשום מורם, לנשום.
ליטל מוכן תוכן!
יולל מוכן תוכן.
אני ברדי.
לא, אתה לא.
10, 9, 8.
מה אתה זולל לי שמן?
עשית בולבול מהפה ותעשה
כן. הוא עשה.
זה באמת.
אני הולך להביא עוד בולבולים קטנים, שנייה אני חוזר.
אוקיי. Whatever tickles your pickle.
זה אם אפשר בולבול בפיתה?
אוי לא. לא, אי אפשר לעשות טופ לזה.
הוא צרח את זה. גם אמא
יפ.
שלו לא הייתה בבית, השכנים שלו שמעו.
אמא שלו הייתה בבית, זה מה שהיה מצחיק. כן, היא אמרה לו, מה אתה מטומטם? סמבוסה, delicious, תחכה. לא יודע, האמת, עכשיו זה לא יצא לי מהראש. יאללה, תתקין עוד פעם את האפליקציות שלך, שיהיה לך את כל החרב לבן הזה.
מה עשיתי בזמן שאתם שיחקתם?
באמת, סיימת להתקין את הכל? רגע, מה שיחקנו?
תבינו, צחקתם על סיום, ואחרי זה חיכית לי איזה 10 דקות, מה עשיתי בזמן הזה?